Hello everyone and welcome to TANKMAS here at the Tank Museum, and boy have we got an interesting evening's entertainment lined up for you. I'm going to introduce, I'm David Willey, I'm the curator here, introduce my good friend Richard Cutland from World of Tanks.
Hello everybody, as David said there, please settle back, put the kettle on, enjoy yourselves for the next 3 hours. We've got a fun-packed 3 hours coming up for you. We've got competitions, we've got some live music, we've got some behind-the-scenes footage and perhaps stuff that you wouldn't usually see down at the Tank Museum. But most of all, we want you to just enjoy yourselves over the next 3 hours.
And part of the reason we've done this is I think we'd all agree everyone's had a pretty off-centre year. Things haven't been good for everyone. This is a way of us, World of Tanks, saying thank you so much for your support, and we're going to be telling you and asking you how you can continue that support. But to get us going, for the first time this evening, we're going to have our little musical number, and we've got the Vintage Vixens are going to be starting us off with In the Mood.
What you doing tonight? Hope you're in the mood because I'm feeling just right. How's about a corner with a table for two, where the music's mellow and some gay rendezvous? There's a chance romancing with a blue attitude. You got to do some dancing to get in the mood. Sister, what you calling? That's a timely idea. Something swing a deal would be good to my ear. Everybody must agree that dancing has charms when you have a certain one you love in your arms. Stepping out with you will be a sweet interlude. Oh, build her up for that will put me in the mood. In the mood. That's it, I got it. In the mood. Your aim was spotted. In the mood. Oh, what a hot hit. We'll be alive, we'll get the job. You've got to learn how. Hep, hep, hep. Hep like a hepper. Pep, pep, pep. Hot as a pepper. Step, step, step. Step like a stepper. We're mugging, we're hugging, we're in the mood now. Mister, what you calling? All you needed was fun. You can see the wonders that this evening has done. Your feet were so heavy till they hardly could move. Now you're light as feathers and you're right in the groove. You were only hungry for some musical food. You're positively, absolutely in the mood. Sister, what you calling? I'm indebted to you. It all goes to show what good I knew we could do. Never felt so happy and so fully alive. Seems that jamming, jumping is a powerful jive. Swing-a-roo is giving me a new attitude. My heart is full of rhythm and I'm in the mood. In the mood, that's it, now I got it and I'm in the mood. Your ear will spot it when you're in the mood. Skippity-boppity, skippity-boppity-boom. We'll be alive, we'll get the job, you got to learn how. Hep, 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 you're hep like a heifer full of pep, pep, pep. Your heart has a pepper and your step, step, step. Step, step like a stepper. We're mugging, and now we're hugging, 'cause we're in the mood.
Are you in the mood now, David?
I'm starting to get there, so I'm rather hoping we're going to see some more of the Vintage Vixens as the evening goes on. Now, all of you there will have known that we, the Tank Museum, were part of a network of many military museums, many tank museums around the world, and we're going to be showing you, so they've offered us some videos, some of the things they've been up to, and one of the things about the whole rest of this evening is how you can help support us, help support them, and also what we can be doing for you as well. Now, if you don't know about where we are today, we're the Tank Museum, and we've got a little film that'll show you a little bit more about what this museum is and what we get up to here.
The Tank Museum, Bovington, UK. The home of the tank. The home of TANKFest. And home to one of the finest collections of armour in the world. The Tank Museum tells the story of the tank and the people that served in them. There are 300 vehicles here, most of which are displayed inside the museum's large halls. In fascinating modern exhibitions, you'll come face to face with tanks that have seen action in every major conflict since the First World War. From the world's first tank to some of the latest, there is an extensive World War II collection and unique examples of the prototypes that didn't quite make the grade. With a workshop facility and an extensive archive and supporting collection, the Tank Museum is a centre of armoured excellence, sharing its passion with a global audience on its YouTube channel. Bovington is regarded as the home of the tank, because it was here that the Tank Corps, the world's first tank regiment, made its home in 1916. This remote rural location was ideal for training tank soldiers, with British, Commonwealth and US troops all passing through the gates of Bovington Camp before heading to the front lines. Over a century later, it remains a major training centre for British soldiers learning to fight in tanks. The Tank Museum was formed in 1923 as a military teaching collection. When the First World War ended in 1918, hundreds of tanks began accumulating in the fields around Bovington, waiting to be cut up for scrap. But thanks to an important intervention, rumours suggest it was Jungle Book author Rudyard Kipling, one of each type was fenced off and saved. During the interwar years, the collection continued to grow. But at the outbreak of the Second World War, some of the collection was sacrificed in the drive for scrap metal. Others were only saved because they were employed as anti-invasion defences at road junctions around the garrison. At the end of the war, the Tank Museum accepted a significant number of new donations from the army. These included many examples of Allied vehicles and a significant number of captured Axis tanks. When the Tank Museum opened to the public in the 1950s, admission was free, and visitors could climb on and inside the vehicles to their heart's content. A new era began at the Tank Museum in 2009, with the completion of a multi-million-pound redevelopment project and the opening of the flagship Tank Story exhibition. Since then, visitor numbers have continued to grow, allowing the Tank Museum to continue to develop its exhibitions and enthuse a new generation in the story of armoured warfare. And there is much more to look forward to from Bovington. The Tank Museum, like all museums featured in this live stream, has been forced to close its doors during the pandemic. The loss of revenue has hit us all hard, as admission fees and event tickets are the primary means by which we earn the funds required to survive. So, if you appreciate what we are presenting in this stream, please consider supporting the Tank Museum and any other of the featured museums, and help us keep these machines in order and their stories alive for generations to come. Remember, as a not-for-profit organisation, our work is funded entirely by people like you. You can support us by backing our Patreon, buying something from our online store, joining our Friends scheme, or simply by making a donation using PayPal giving.
And I'm delighted to be joined now by the director of the Tank Museum. It's the legend, Mr. Richard Smith.
Good evening. Nice to see you.
How are you, sir? You well?
Yeah, despite the rather turgid nastiness of the year, yeah, we're bearing up remarkably successfully. Thanks very much.
What's it been like for the museum this year?
2020 has been the most bizarre year that we've ever had, I think, actually. It's on all sorts of levels. I think it's been as sort of grossly awful for the Tank Museum as it has been for anybody else. But like everybody else, we've had to get through it. And with a little help from our friends, we have.
So what's been the sort of the main... I mean, obviously, visitor numbers have been down dramatically. You were forced to close for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, we've been closed for 4 months this year, and when your main income stream is being a tourist attraction, that's a real blow. It's really difficult. However, fortunately, we've been really fortunate. We've had all sorts of support. We've been very lucky in government support. So we had support from the Cultural Recovery Fund, which it's the UK support for arts and heritage organisations like ours. So we got a lot of support from that. We've had support from the National Lottery. We've had support from thousands of supporters all over the world, actually, whether they've been helping us on Patreon, through the Friends of the Tank Museum. And we've had 25,000 people this year who bought something in our shop. And everyone who's bought something from our shop has helped pay the bills for this year, and that's made a real difference. And even the people who've consumed our content, just watching a video of the Tank Museum on YouTube means we get that little bit of advertising money, and that all makes a real difference to us. So I just like to say the opportunity to thank everybody for their support this year.
It is Christmas, Richard, so on Mr. Smith's Christmas list, obviously a tank. What would you want?
Ooh, now there's a question. For me, the tank I would want for Christmas is not a type of tank, it's one specific tank. And that one specific tank, even though it's one tank, it didn't stop it from having 3 names of Big Willey, of HMLS Centipede, or the name it's most generally known by is Mother. And Mother was the second ever tank. Slightly tragically, we used to have it here at the Tank Museum. So we've got Little Willey is still here. It was the first ever tank. Mother was the first successful prototype. So Mother, it looks like a Mark I, although I'm sure you know well, it's got different types of rivets on it. But Mother was the second ever tank, but it was because it was the first ever successful prototype. It was the model for all the tanks that came after it. It's how they solved crossing trenches and how they figured out how to mount their guns. Mother would be the one I want. It might even be closer than we think, because there are 2 stories about what happened to Mother. It disappeared in about 1940 when people were taking down their railings and things like this, because the Germans were being a bit beastly at the time. When Mother was off for scrap, and the 2 stories are, one is it did go for scrap, and the other is it didn't and got buried somewhere in Bovington, but nobody really knows where. So there's a mystery that goes with it as well. So Mother would be the tank I would choose for Christmas. That's probably quite enough from me, I think, for today's session. I hope the rest of today goes really well. I'd just like to take the opportunity before I finish my bit to say thank you ever so much for World of Tanks and to Wargaming, and particularly Victor Kisley for his support for us and for the rest of the museums over the course of the last few years, and particularly this year. The partnership with World of Tanks and the Tank Museum community is a really strong one. So I'm delighted that Victor's going to be following me and the next video with a message for everybody.
Hello tankers, I'm Victor Kisley, the CEO of Wargaming, and a big fan of tanks. Unfortunately, year 2020 did not give us too many opportunities to speak face to face. So I'm going to use this video technology to wish to all of you, our amazing players, and all tank enthusiasts around the world, a very Merry Christmas. May this holiday season bring to you and your families health, happiness, and peace. See you in 2021 in Bovington at Tank Fest. Happy New Year.
This year, Chuck Norris is in charge of the holidays in World of Tanks. You must be wondering why. Well, once, Chuck Norris destroyed 3 enemies with his fingers simply by saying, "Bang!" With the help of friends, you too can achieve amazing things. Join Chuck Norris this holiday.
Play World of Tanks on PC now. Get your Tier 4 Tank Destroyer for free.
So, Mr. Smith there has just said Mother is missing from his Christmas wish list. What about you, David?
Well, I'll do the official bit first. We do actually, here at the Tank Museum, we've got a wants list of the vehicles that we want to acquire. And that's not just any one person's opinion. You know, we all sit around the table, the great and the good and the learned. We have something called the collection committee. So we've got on that the things you imagine, you know, a JS2, a Merkava, T10, something along those lines, a Leclerc and Abrams, we've been after one for ages. So there's that long thing. For me personally, I'd love us to get a representation for the Reconnaissance Corps. We are supposed to be their museum. It was a body in World War II that very elite guys actually, and they had something called a Humber LRC, which is like a long-bodied armoured car. And whether it's because I've personally coveted one all my life, but I think the other side, if we had that, we could do it because the Reconnaissance Corps used it. I'd love to see that as part of the collection, and it's possible because there are some out there, but we haven't got one at the moment. So if anybody wins the pools or that Euro Millions, put that on the wish list, okay? So that's what we're looking for here.
And because you've got a dingo.
Yeah, there's things, that's where you have to put two hats on. What you'd love yourself and what would be great on the gallery. So, you know, different things, and this debate can go on forever. And we do, funny enough, it's another one that we do have a lengthy conversations about. If you're going to ask for this, why aren't we doing this? Or we've got too many of those. And pruning the collection's another thing we do as well. So with things here, won't always be here, because I do think some areas we probably over-collect sometimes.
But if there was one, so come on, I'm going to push you for just one thing that you can have in the collection.
That reconnaissance vehicle. I'd definitely go for that. I'd go for that for the collection.
Definitely yours. And we're now going to go talking about the other museums that we did. We're going to go across and to a museum which both of us are superb fans of. Very good friends of ours, Stefan.
Yeah, Stefan, we've known a long time, and he does wonderful videos, doesn't he, as well? So.
He does fantastic videos. We're going to have a bet on who's wearing the best clothed director of a museum throughout.
And the curators. Look out for how curators dress. Really important this evening.
It's obviously a prerequisite that curators have to wear tweed.
We've got to have tweed and a facial hair, but we'll see that coming. So.
But without further ado, we're going to go straight across to Arsenalen and the Swedish Tank Museum and our very good friend Stefan.
Welcome to the Swedish Tank Museum, Arsenalen. Not only a tank museum, we also have a lot of different vehicles to show to the public that all these vehicles belong to each other on the battlefield. Not only tanks or armored fighting vehicles, but also different scout cars, lorries, etc. in this combined situation. And in the collection we have not only Swedish vehicles, but also a lot of foreign vehicles that has been used in Sweden or tested or just exchange. Some of the vehicles are more than 100 years old. Some of the vehicles we keep in running condition because we think it's important for the public to see them moving, hear the sound, feel the vibration in the ground. And quite a few are unique. You cannot see them anywhere else in the world. And even if they are not that well known, we think it's important to tell our story from the Swedish perspective, why we needed to produce our own tanks in Sweden. What I would like for Christmas is a car, a very special car, a DeLorean, to travel back in time. And if I could travel back in time, I would go back to 1948 and say to the people in charge in Sweden, please don't save this tank for the future. Otherwise we will regret it and we will blame you for destroying parts of the history. And what kind of tank is it that I would like to save? So these three items are the only things that remain from the King Tiger that Sweden had from 1947 when it was gifted from France until 1948 when it was dragged out to the firing range, and the following years it was used as a target. They shot at it and then cut it up to pieces. Totally gone. And I would like to travel back to stop this from happening. Engine and gearbox, they were, for some reason they took them out before they shot it to pieces, and we don't really know why. The turret hatch was found on that site and kept. So we would like to bring these items back to the tank where they once belonged. And if you are interested in this story, there is a story told on the Swedish Army Historical Association website, and there is a link where you can find this story, how it was found in France, the transport to Sweden, all what happened when they dragged it out to the firing range, They used 6,000 liters of petrol to drag it out to the firing range, and then they shot it to pieces. And just a few years ago, they managed to find out some more about the story, where it actually was before it was found in the southern part of France after the Second World War, how it ended up there. And it was one of the first 50 pre-production Tigers that was ever made. So this was something that we would like to have kept in Sweden as part of the history. Did you know that Sweden had a King Tiger? Or are you aware that we in the museum have our own YouTube channel? If not, please check out and subscribe to our channel, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and see what we can offer to you. So that was my Christmas wish. If you had a time machine, where would you go? And in the meantime, while waiting for Santa to bring it to you, you can watch our YouTube, Facebook and Instagram. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. God jul allihopa!
God jul!
So it was good to see Stefan there, wasn't it, actually?
Super. I love Stefan. I love the museum. It's a real homely feel to that particular museum.
Looked like he didn't starve in the lockdown. That's the other good thing about it.
Absolutely.
Now, we said we're going to cheer you up this evening. So we've now got a competition for you. So 2 people are very luckily going to win 2 separate prizes.
And we've got a couple, and we've got lots and lots of great prizes, but the first 2 prizes we're going to give away, firstly, is going to be one of the Tank Museum's goodie bags. We'll have a look at one of those in a particular moment, rammed with fantastic gifts. The second, more aimed towards our World of Tanks players and our community, will be a whole year of World of Tanks premium accounts, so a whole year of accounts. So 2 prizes. Now, the way to enter these prizes, in a moment, David is going to give you the question. You need to answer that question and put it in chat. You can put it in on the World of Tanks channel, either on our Twitch channel or on our YouTube channel, and also on the Tank Museum YouTube channel. So put it in chat there. And the question for the first competition is...
So, how many Matilda II tanks were made by the British in World War II? Or British as a whole? So, how many Matilda II tanks were made by Britain?
So put your thinking caps on now, get it into those channels. The time you've got is for the time it will take myself and David to have a chat and a wander across to the Matilda II on display in the museum. But before we do that, just so you're aware of what you're going to get in one of the goodie bags, we'll have a quick run through, David. There's a nice pair of socks, of course. Fantastic. Thank you to Steel Series for these. These are World of Tanks gaming mouses, so from Steel Series, donated there. There's also, I have to mention this, otherwise David is going to kill me.
I've got a copy here. Covered in dandruff. I've got a copy here, World of Tanks, no it's not World of Tanks, it's our Dorling Kindersley tank book. It's been our bestseller and I strongly recommend it.
Bullet flask, fantastic, love one of these. I've got one of these myself actually, I shouldn't say that, should I? Top Trumps, fantastic. There is a t-shirt, various sizes, various designs as well from World of Tanks. We've also got... A big fan, David?
Yeah, blow up shells.
And finally, of course, the obligatory model as well, again, at random types of models this. Now, a point to make when we do actually send these out, obviously, for the best will in the world, depending on, obviously, where around the globe you actually live, we do our best to get it to you all for Christmas. Of course, please be aware that the likelihood, and certainly in some countries now, is very unlikely that you're going to get it before Christmas. So hopefully a New Year present. And also a point on any of the in-game prizes, so the year's worth of World of Tanks account premium is also valid only on the European server, so only valid on the European server. So you've got the question, you've got a few minutes now to get the answers in there. And we're going to make our way across.
We are. So this gives us an opportunity. I'm going to show Richard. We've done earlier this year, wonderful new first half of our World War II displays. We're going to head through it and I'll be explaining to Richard some of the things we can see. Again, when we are open, please do come back. And over this winter, we'll be finishing the second half so we can see some of that as well. So we're going to be following outside the door and off we go. So as you can see, at the moment, we've been setting this in our home front house, which you've not seen any of this before.
This is the first time I come down there, and this is all absolutely brand new to me, so fantastic. A house in the museum?
Yeah, so what we do this for, as you can imagine, it's schools, they're doing about the home front in the Second World War. We've got an Anderson shelter just around the corner. We've actually got a shop here selling or showing the type of things that was shown in or sold in the war years. And we've got a cinema that, again, that helps introduce people to the subject of what Britain was like in the 19th war. And you'll see behind us, amongst all the equipment, all the stuff that the guys are using in terms of for filming. But we've got there's our Rolls-Royce armoured Beaverette there. Some of those vehicles from Britain in the 1940s are on display in this bit. One of the key things, I know you feel strongly about this, that we've been trying to get across is on these displays, as we walk around, you'll probably see mainly the vehicles, but our key element in this World War II display is trying to tell stories of the soldiers.
Yeah. And again, I mean, like, we are so on board with this that the vehicles are fantastic and the mechanics are incredible and fascinating, but it's all about the people as well. So I do find it incredible, this particular display.
We're lucky. We've been doing interviews with veterans for a number of years. We've done some more for this special bit, but there's a number of veterans that you get to meet as you go through these displays a number of times, and a number of people we almost call back on, so you see their progress throughout the war and their personal accounts, and that's something we've made it on. The other thing we've tried to do is talk a lot more about battles that sometimes don't get mentioned so much. So we've done about France in 1940, we've done about the Desert Campaign, things like Operation Compass, and we'll look as we go around a little bit later on. There's one or two other areas we can show you, and some of the work we're still doing, and you'll see that as we go around, work in progress in some areas. But let's carry on going, because we asked that question, how many Matilda IIs were made by Britain in the Second World War? And for us, it's another one of those really important issues, because we tended, I grew up with that belief that all the German stuff was always better, everything else, that the German equipment was the best. But in 1940, this tank was recognised by the Germans as well as probably being the best tank on the battlefield. Char B was tremendously effective as well, so was the Saumur. We've got one of those on display over here. But that thick armour on the Matilda II was really effective in defence, and that 2-pounder gun that was being fired would have gone through any known German tank in 1940. So this was a very effective machine in those early war battles.
Looks like it's had a fresh cut of paint recently.
It has, actually. We've done this one on here. This one is we've done this as part of our desert story that we're doing here, and this one's something called the Cornter scheme. If you're model makers out there watching this, you know you love all those different schemes that are put on tanks, and one of the things here, we've purposely looked at this. This was basically it's a camouflage scheme breaking up the outline of the vehicles. That's why it's looking in this rather sort of faceted looking shape and colours we've got on it.
It's always, the whole camouflage conversation is always quite tempered with. It's a hard thing to get right, I have to say.
Everyone will criticise whatever you do, and there's other issues with the museum because we can be absolutely perfectly right. But here's a simple one. Matte paints show up finger marks just very, very quickly, so quite often we end up doing things like having an eggshell or a silk finish on vehicles, because obviously that means in the end that it's easier to clean. We don't have too much of a worry there. Now, we're going to come at this moment, coming to the end of our little bit on the Matilda and the Matilda questions. So if you've written these, even if you're just writing them on a bit of a paper at home, how many Matilda II tanks were made by the British in World War II? Your final chance, 2,987 is the correct answer. So 2,987 Matilda IIs made in the Second World War.
And I wonder how many got that right.
I expect there's a fair old few of you sitting there either grabbing down your volume or looking it up on, I don't know, Wikipedia or something or other. Careful, because sometimes I get it wrong.
So that's competition one. We've got another competition coming up later on, but we're going to make our way back to the house now, because again, we want to introduce you for the second time this evening to the fantastic vintage vixens.
Merry Christmas, girls.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Are you ready to sing a little Jingle Bells?
Yes. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh.
Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh. O'er the fields we go, laughing all the way. Bells on bobtail ring, making spirits bright. What fun it is to run and sing a sleighing song tonight.
Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what a lot of fun to ride and sing in a one-horse open sleigh.
Dashing through the snow,
We are dashing
in a one-horse open sleigh.
one-horse sleigh.
All the fields we go,
Over the fields we go,
laughing all the way.
all the way.
Bells on bobtail ring, making spirits bright. What fun it is to ride and sing a sleighing song tonight.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way.
Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Da 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 da. Ooh, ba 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 da ba da ba da do da ba da ba do la da do la da do la da do la da do. Hey, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Ooh, jingling, jingle bells all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Hey!
So you're feeling particularly festive now, I hope, David?
I'm getting more in the mood. The more I hear them, the more in the mood I get.
Now, I have to say, a few people have mentioned to me, obviously, that with, and obviously, Santa Claus springs to mind or something. And, of course, we are, at the moment, sat in a myriad of merchandise.
So you might have wondered why all this is around us. A little bit of a hint here. One of the ways that we at the Tank Museum, when we've been closed through COVID, one thing that's taken off for us is online sales. And I mention that because whatever museum, there's your local one, have a look at what they're trying to sell, because when you want to come back to those museums, if they fail, if they close, we don't want to sound too depressing, but by buying things from their shops, from online, joining their schemes, becoming a friend of those museums, etc., or for the Tank Museum, Patreon as well, all of that helps, keeps us going. So what I'd encourage you is, we've got some of the products here. We did a fantastic sale this year of things like, we were doing these tank slippers, have gone down really well, our books, our models. We've got things that because of this, we've been encouraging to do. Things like here, we've got a Kobe Tog tank. This is actually the prototype of it, but that should be coming for sale in the new year. So don't think of it just for Christmas. It's going to be a problem, of course, for Christmas now, because you might get things if you put an order in, they may get there in time, but think of that spending money you've got, where you're going to spend it in the new year. Think of us and think of those other museums, so you'll be helping to support them and keep them going. So that's why we've got all the products around us. I'm sure you'll find something that will meet your tastes, and by buying it from us, we're a charity. Boy, does that help us do what we need to do. Now, we're going to show you our little Christmas advert, so forgive us if it looks like there's a little bit more product placement coming your way.
The Tank Museum shop, where every penny you spend supports our mission to preserve history.
What a fantastic video. I have to say, the first time I saw that, David, I just felt, you know, like warm and cuddly. It was nice to see the two Davids together.
I was going to
well.
say, there's something about it. It's almost Eric and Ernie sort of feel, isn't it?
The two Ronnies.
Two Ronnies, something of that sort of period. Anyway, one thing we've got for you now, one thing all museums, when you go around the galleries, you kind of know there's always stuff that's not on display. And many museums, what you do see can sometimes be like the tip of the iceberg. So here at the Tank Museum, we've taken Richard and with members of staff here, shown them some of the areas behind the scenes. And what you're going to see now is Richard being taken around one of our supporting collection stores. That's pretty much everything that's not a tank, you know, uniforms, medals, all sorts of bits and pieces. So we're going to hand over now and you're going to get to see what Richard saw earlier in the week.
So welcome to the supporting collection stores. This is store 1, Richard.
Well,
so
this is fantastic, Stuart. Look at it in here.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. But this is where we have the ordnance, as well as the firearm collection stored here. So we've got a range of ammunition going back to the First World War, all the way up to the more modern ammunition that we have issued to tanks of today. The first round I'm going to start off today is this 6-pounder round that would have been fired from a Mark IV in the First World War. You can see the driving band. This is a 6-pounder that would have been fired from the Hotchkiss 6-pounder gun, and this would have had basically just a solid shot of it. It's designed to sort of penetrate other armour and things like pillboxes, etc. So quite a small little round.
That's nice, that's nice. As soon as we came in here, Stuart, I had to say all I could think of was ammo bashing on the ranges and what hard work it was.
Oh, I can imagine with that. We go up to World War II now. So we've got 1 case ammunition, got propellant here, and the 17-pounder round for the things like the Firefly, the Archer. Bit of a beast, this one. So this is armour-piercing capped, ballistic capped. So it's quite a potent force.
When you handle it as well, you could just imagine that as, you know, how much of a pain that must have been to manhandle around the turret and actually put it into the breech.
Yeah,
it's a big old round.
It's a big old round. These are the ones that would have been used up to the sort of, once you get past D-Day, so August, etc., 1944, and they would be penetrating things like Panthers, out to about 1,000 metres, etc. So they're very capable round. We come up here to the APDS, the armour-piercing discarding sabot round. So in here we've got basically a dart, a metal dart, put inside a pot, and when this is fired, the petals will come off, and this will be basically propelled at a high velocity towards the target. Now, what do you remember about these, Richard?
Yeah, well, first of all, I remember I said ammo bashing for them. It was always loading it into the vehicles. And interestingly enough, of course, on tanks, you've got special places to store your ammunition. But I have to say, of course, you like to have as much ammunition as you possibly can. So we used to actually end up, although don't tell anybody this, just loading them on top of one another inside the turret. Yeah, but interestingly enough, I mean, you see there, you've got this APDS round. Obviously, part of this would also be the bag charge, which is I see you've got a load of bag charges up there. Oh, yeah, not sure if I can see the one which is actually matches up to this one. But in essence, when you're firing there, all you get is, so this goes up first, obviously into the barrel, push it up as far as you can with your arm into the breech ring. You then put your bag charge behind it, and then you've got, and I see you've got one down here, a vent tube magazine.
Yes.
Now the vent tube magazine goes onto the vent tube loader, and inside there are a load of what they call vent tubes. And they're basically, the brass cartridges look a bit like a shotgun cartridge. And when you fire, they're fired electronically. Actually, they ignite. The explosion then from this would ignite the igniter pad on the bag charge. That burns incredibly fastly, ignites the cordite inside the bag charge, and that then produces the pressure and the force to push this round all the way out the barrel. Incredible. And that's as simple as that.
Yeah, wow. And then that just, obviously, that is kinetic energy round that's hurtling towards the enemy's tank. Of course, what happens is that the enemy's armour is getting stronger and stronger, so we start coming up with different rounds to actually penetrate. So here's a fin round.
Armour-piercing, fin-stabilised discarding sabot. Really good round, really effective round. Very nice indeed.
Yeah, I think that will penetrate roughly about 450 millimetres worth of armour, so it's got a potency. It's a tungsten round on that one.
Yeah, and also, of course, it's interesting to point out, I mean, you've also got a Hesh round down there, I see, but of course these were designed to penetrate, like you say, penetrate armour, whereas, of course, the high explosive rounds, bunkers, you know, infantry out in the open, things like that.
Yeah. Now going to the Hesh round, of course, is this high explosive squash head. This is a much weightier round. This is about 17 kilograms.
You're going to make me put this up now, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, of course, with this one, in the turret, this was, you know, if you fired a few of these after a while, you have to be pretty fit as a loader in there.
I can imagine.
And, of course, speed was everything with us. I mean, the, you know, British Army, of course, we have to, you know, there's no automatic loaders or anything, so everything's done manually. But a really effective round, really, really effective round.
And the copper band that we've got round there, is used as the driving band. Could you just explain that for us when it's used in a rifled gun?
Well, of course, you know, we are in the UK, we love our rifled guns. Now, we're not going to get into that debate because we'd be here for about 13 hours. We're talking about rifled guns. But with the driving band, it actually goes into the grooves on the rifling there. And the idea is, of course, if you spin any particular round, it imparts more stability on it and it makes it more accurate. Now, of course, there'll be a lot of people out there saying that's not necessary nowadays. And they're right in some degree. So it's just a British thing. It's what we've been used to.
So it's an impressive collection of Chieftain 120mm ammunition and really a potent capability that the Chieftain gave above its potential adversaries like the you know, the T62s or T72s as they're coming out. So it allowed it to basically keep itself above them and be able to knock them out at decent ranges. And of course the other thing is, that you're going to have practice rounds, and of course they're painted blue.
Yeah, because you've got quite a few of them dotted around here. And obviously the only idea of practice rounds was the pure fat's much cheaper to produce. And also, when if you went down the road on Lulworth ranges, of course, you haven't got that range, i.e. the distance that you can practice firing out to so much. So practice rounds were fantastic. Awesome.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much, Stuart. Appreciate that. And I know we're coming back to you later on to look at some small arms, I believe.
Yes, we are. We'll shortly see those.
And we're now joined by the man himself, Mr. Stuart Wheeler. Thank you so much for joining us, Stuart. And thank you so much for taking me around that day. It was absolutely fascinating out on the store there.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Richard. You know, it's great for getting people out into the stores and getting them to see what's behind the scenes, because we can only get so much out into the actual museum itself. So it's always important to try and get people to understand the sheer scale of the stuff that we've actually got here, the items that we have in the stores and in the archive itself.
Now, the supporting collection, as David sort of briefly mentioned there, so it's all the things that sort of are not really tank-related. They are tank-related, aren't they? But it's, how would you sum up a supporting collection?
I'd sum it up as basically it's the stowage items that go on the tank and inside the tank, and it's the items that are used by the crew themselves. So obviously the uniforms they wear and any of the equipment, any of the weapons, ordnance, all that type of stuff. So the stuff that lives on the tank or belongs to the tank, we look after in the supporting collection.
And also, of course, you've got your archives over there. Now, the archives itself is absolutely fascinating. And what's the sort of role of an archive?
The role of an archive is to basically care for the documents that it has and the film and the photographs, etc. But the key thing is basically to get the items out to individuals so they can actually find them and see them. So if you're doing research, one of the things is you want to be able to come to us and go, I'm looking for X, Y, and Z. And we've got to go, oh, yes, we've got them here, and you can actually use them. There's no point in having items that we're keeping hidden away or we don't know where they are. So for us, it's about having them, cataloguing them, and then getting them out to people so they can actually research from them.
I have to say, I've been to numerous archives around the world, and I have to say, when we've always come to you, you seem to have beyond the ball as far as the archive categorising is concerned. Sometimes we've been to, I won't mention who it was, but we spent a week there, and we had to look through, my goodness, 200-300 boxes before we could actually find something that we were actually after. But it must be a hell of a job for you and your staff.
Oh, it is. We're at now 110,000 items on our database, approaching that. And so it's basically, guys really sitting there and looking at the document and thinking, OK, I'm coming from a different perspective. I don't particularly like this document, but what would a researcher like to look at? And they write the keywords down, so then we can do a search later on and hopefully find it. The key's knowing what you've got in your archive. I've been lucky enough to be in there 15, 16 years now, and so I have a good idea where most of the stuff is.
And what made you want to go into this sort of line of work?
Well, it's really, I was studying at King's College at War Studies down in London, and then I saw a appeal by a certain David Willey, who was wearing a moustache then, and it basically was looking for volunteers for the archive, and I thought, that sounds interesting. And back 20 years ago, I came down here and started working in the archive.
And we haven't got a lot of time, I know, but we have to mention you are the star at the moment of a new show in the Tank Museum.
Yes, anti-tank chats, yes. So basically, again, this is finding the anti-tank weapons that are in the archive, that are in documents, but also the actual weapons that we have in the supporting collection, and basically doing little videos of those so we can get that across to people what we've got in the actual supporting collection itself.
And we're going to come back to you, I know, a bit later on this evening. We're actually going to look at some of the small arms that we've got in there. So anyway, Stuart, it's fantastic what you do. It's brilliant. Thank you so much. I know everybody in this field appreciates the work of the archives when they go in there, and your staff, I have to say, your staff are so on the money and so on the ball at helping people, and they're really, really kind and generous to anybody that goes into, whether it's an expert or somebody who's just got a general interest in it. So thank you very much for that, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thanks very much, Richard.
So we're going to see again Stuart again a bit later on in the programme, but for now we're going to have a little bit more live music, and we're going to go straight back to the vintage vixens.
There's a new little boy in the neighborhood, and last night it started to snow. So we brought out his sleigh and was all set to play, but the gang didn't say hello. So I made friends with the poor little tyke, and he said to me, "Do you know what I like? To hitch a ride with Santa Claus. Wouldn't that be something to see? I'd like to hitch a ride with Santa Claus, dodging the clouds, waving a crowd. I'd crack the whip and keep a watch for weather vanes. I'd help him with his bag and check each Christmas tag, or maybe I could handle the reins. I'd like to hitch a ride with Santa Claus. Wouldn't they be jealous of me? You couldn't say I ran away, because after we roll, he'll drive me home. And when they see me Christmas morning, what'll they say with a look of delight? There goes the boy that rode with Santa Claus last night. I'd crack the whip and keep a watch for weather vanes. I'd help him with his bag and check each Christmas tag, or maybe I could handle the reins. I'd like to hitch a ride with Santa Claus. Wouldn't they be jealous of me? You couldn't say I ran away, because after we roll, he'll drive me home. And when they see me Christmas morning, what'll they say with a look of delight? There goes the boy that rode with Santa Claus last night. There goes the boy that hitched a ride with Santa Claus last night.
Hello, I'm Luke Neller and welcome to Best Replays of the Week. In this episode we have a Last Man Standing versus Search and Destroy. Roll out. Before we begin, did you know that you can now submit your replays through the official World of Tanks Discord? Simply join up and drop your replay link in the Best Replays of the Week chat. No descriptions or limits, just send as many as you like. It's that easy. Now on to just as salty as the sea, who finds themselves in a rather murky situation. With sodium levels rising and the number of spare shells dropping, this game feels like one big yikes to me. Double yikes. Only high explosives left. Just about... Aww. An APCR shell short of victory. What a heartbreak for our hero. And finally, Peacock chirps it away, because we know how much you love those. Take it away, Zanny. Beautiful. Well done to all of you, now proud owners of our Best Replays of the Week style.
So here we are at the TANKMAS event, hopefully giving you an entertaining evening. And we're back to that point where we have another competition.
We do, David. So this competition, we've got another fantastic goodie bag to give away. But plus, on top of that, we've also got another separate prize. We've got the legendary Type 59 to give away as well. So for all the World of Tank players know very well how hard and how rare it is to get a Type 59. So again, exactly the same rules and conditions as before. So we've got two separate prizes to give away. The goodie bag, the Type 59. When David gives you the question, you can have the time it takes from myself and David to get across to this particular vehicle in question and give us the answer,
So, here we go. Get ready. 1, 2, 3. Boom. What is the size in millimetres of the main armament on a Grant tank? So, what is the size in millimetres of the main armament on a Grant tank? So, get working quite quick. Get that answers in. Now we're going to go and have a look at some of the other bits.
Just remember those, so there's the question, drop it into the World of Tanks, either Twitch or on YouTube, the chat in there. You've got the time it takes for us to walk across there, or indeed you could do it on the Tank Museum's YouTube channel as well. So let's get across there.
Okay, so we're going to walk out again and we're going to show you yet another bit of our new World War II displays, and you'll be seeing some of those tanks you no doubt recognise. Off we go. So as we come out, you've seen all this wonderful part before, all our lovely home front house. I'll pace ourselves nicely so our poor cameraman doesn't fly backwards.
This is the worry we had from the start, wasn't it?
Yeah,
The
so when we go
backwards.
through here, it's all very well for us, but the poor guy's got to keep us in focus, keep it. We'll keep talking. We don't mind talking about talking, but also making sure that we don't actually bump into any of these big tanks, because as I've said before, if any of these camera crew gets blood on our tanks, boy, are we going to get annoyed. Now, as we go around here, we're going to go in a slightly different direction this time. We're going to head towards an area we haven't been in. So there was our Matilda 2. We've got a lovely A10 up behind. We've got some imagery here as well.
What's going on with Stuart here?
Still going through the collection. So even though we've put all the vehicles in place, one of our issues has been that obviously it's a big debate all the time. We said earlier about camouflage, painting things. This was actually a Stuart, a light tank gifted to us, M3 tank by the Brazilians many moons ago, but we're using it in the context of an M3 used by the British out in North Africa at that particular period. So that's why we're painting it in a British camouflage scheme or British light stone scheme at the time. As we go on, we've got other classics. The Valentine, the tank Britain made the most of in the Second World War, often gets overlooked, but tremendously reliable, great bit of kit. And we've got something here called the SDF KFZ 251. It's basically the famous German half-track. And this particular one is a very early one. It looks a little bit stripped from the outside. It's been in movies, it's been all over the place in its lifetime, but it started life out in North Africa, actually as an ambulance. And there's fittings on it, you can actually tell, and in certain lights you can even see that symbol on the side where they've actually got a red cross.
So I think it's worth mentioning as well that not all these, obviously the first time I came down here, you assume that a museum it all belongs to the museum, but actually you've got some private collectors that...
We do. Most of the stuff on display inside the galleries belongs to the Tank Museum, but certainly in line with running fleet vehicles and vehicles we can display. So you're going to be seeing, and we'll be showing you a little bit later on in one of our stores, some of those privately owned vehicles. But pretty much everything you see here is a collection that's been put together originally, right starting 1923, the idea teaching collection for the soldiers, captured equipment, evaluation stuff, things we've been looking at, so that this is still used to this day to teach the troops. How is it that these vehicles...
You said that, of course, when I did my training down here, across the road, we came across here and you'd get many lectures, obviously, about the tank, all the way from World War I all the way up. And this is one of your favourites, David?
It's a lovely one as well. I love all that earlier in the war period vehicles. And this is the M3 Grant tank. And those of you, if you're a bit of a tank fan, difference between a Grant and a Lee tank. So Britain goes to America, before America's in the war, it starts saying, look, what can we buy off you? Can we get your factories starting to produce things? One amazing story that actually happened was there was talk about making the Americans, or asking the Americans, to make the French Char B tank, because that was considered good and successful. So could they make those as well? Because, of course, in the summer of 1940, Britain is desperate for tanks. Now, initially, the Americans look at the idea, do we actually build tanks just for the British? But they ended up thinking it's a better idea to put their own ideas into production and be able to supply those to the British. So the first tank they come up with is the M3, and this one is a British version, the Grant tank, because it doesn't have that extra cupola on the top. That's how you tell a Lee, which was the American version. And that's the main armament on there, that you've got that main armament there. 37mm gun is the other smaller one on the top, and with the Lee there would even be more machine guns on the turret. A lot of emphasis, early tanks with the Americans, lots of machine guns seem to appear all over the vehicles, and that slowly starts getting sort of reduced as time goes on. So, looking at this one, back to the competition, what was the question we asked you? We said, what is the size in millimetres of the main armament of this gun? And that gun is 75mm. So the size of the hole at the end of the barrel there, 7.5 centimetres across, or 75mm. If you've put that down, well done, you're in a chance for winning the competition.
Fantastic. And without further ado, we're now going to go across to our next museum, and it is the US Armour and Cavalry Collection.
Greetings from America. I'm Rob Kogan, the curator of the U.S. Army Armor and Cavalry Collection at Fort Benning, Georgia. We serve as the training, technical, and research and development collection for the U.S. Army Armor School, as well as the U.S. Army at large. 2020 has been especially taxing, I think, for most folks, but we've had the great fortune of receiving a brand new, state-of-the-art 100,000 square foot building this year. A lot of our time in between isolation and pandemic measures has been spent moving our vast armor collection, which ranges from pre-World War I vehicles to today's prototypes, inside the new building so that they can be preserved for generations to come. So when the Tank Museum asked if we would be interested in doing a tank presentation for their TANKMAS program, of course we were really excited to participate, but we have, or at least I should say I have, the unusual circumstances that right now, of course, like many people here in the United States, I'm isolating at home. And so I had to get a little creative with how we presented this tank. And so using what resources I had at home, as well as some materials I had on hand from work, I present to you the T-28 Super Heavy Tank.
The T-28 Super Heavy tank traces its origins to 1943 when the US began to develop an assault tank specifically to attack and breach through the Siegfried Line, also known as the West Wall, which was the German defensive line on the border with France. With over 12 inches of frontal armor, the 95-ton T-28 heavy tank, as it was originally called, was expected to conduct short attacks through built-up defenses, allow more standard light and medium tanks to exploit through. Due to this massive weight, the design featured 4 tracks. For transportation purposes, the T-28 could remove its outer tracks and tow them as a single unit. By the time only 2 T-28 tanks were finished, the war was over, and its original purpose was gone. Now, during this time, the type changed names twice. In 1945, it was redesignated as the 105mm gun motor carriage T-95, only to be redesignated one final time as the T-28 Super Heavy tank in 1946, so that is the official name. With no wars to fight, the 2 T-28s were used to test new transportation and mobility assets, like heavy equipment movers and floating bridges. Unfortunately, the second T-28 suffered a catastrophic engine fire during one of these tests, and unfortunately was scrapped. The sole surviving T-28 was sent to Fort Belvoir, Virginia, to the Mobility Equipment and Development Center, or MURDIC, where it continued to be used for testing for a little bit until it was simply discarded to an unused training area and forgotten for about 27 years. Rediscovered in 1974, it was sent to Fort Knox, Kentucky, and put on display outside the Patton Museum until the Armor Collection moved with the Armor School to Fort Benning, Georgia in 2011. After a wait of 9 years, the T-28 was finally given something it had never had in its 75-year life, a permanent indoor home. With the help of volunteers and multiple organizations here on Fort Benning, the T-28 was reassembled and moved into the Armor and Cavalry Collection's new training support facility. The massive undertaking took multiple days and 2 M88A2 Hercules armored recovery vehicles, but the T-28 is now protected from the elements. If you'd like to know more about this fascinating tank and the process it took to reassemble and move it, content creator and friend of the collection Sophie Line has done a fantastic set of videos on YouTube. This even includes an inside tour of the crew compartment, and I think you'd really enjoy it.
So if you would like to know more about what we're doing over here in the United States with the Armor Collection, please like and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are on social media. We are starting to put footage up on YouTube. And I'd like to take a moment and thank the Tank Museum for inviting us to participate again. We really miss being able to host live events, of course, and I hope that once everything goes back to normal, we can come over for the next Real Life Tank Fest. We miss seeing all our friends in the International Armor Museum community, and I hope everyone watching this has a happy holidays and stays safe. Thank you.
So there's a Christmas jumper and a half from Rob there in America.
I was going to say, there's some competition amongst the museums at the moment with Christmas jumpers.
I'm not sure they all got the same message that we all got. Anyway, so that was Rob, and obviously, again, if you're ever in the States and there is the opportunity, do try and have a look at that collection. Technically, they're hoping to be able to open it, and there's special events and organised tours there as well. Now, back to that idea, what's all that collection that's out of sight all the time? And the next film is again with Richard being taken by our head of collections, Chris van Chardenberg, and an old friend of Richard, Jonathan Kneebone, through the workshops, which is another one of those areas where not everyone gets to see it, but a fascinating load of work goes on. So here's a little video we put together of the workshops at the Tank Museum.
So Chris, the workshop's absolutely fantastic. Firstly, it's obviously, of course, where all the real workers in the museum hang around. What a really nice building. New as well.
Yes, we built this with lottery funding, supported by lottery funding in 2018, and it really gives us all the opportunities now to start working properly on these vehicles. We never had a crane, a 25-ton crane, or the sheer space and the equipment that we can house here. So good facilities for the guys. And it's just great. We have so many projects lined up. Unfortunately, this year was a bit slow. We were shut down for long periods of time. but eager to go next year. A lot of catching up to do. Some vehicles are stored here as well. It's a bit of everything at the moment, not just projects, but this Centurion was built as a Centurion 2. I think David Fletcher mentioned it in one of his tank chats, later upgraded to a 5. It's one of the oldest surviving Centurions. And we acquired it thanks to the generous support of the David Webster Charitable Trust, because they put the money up for us, because we hardly ever purchase vehicles. But we hope to add this to the running fleet in the years ahead. It's complete, it needs work, but it's all there, and quite a unique vehicle. And interestingly enough, it's more pure coincidence. We have the pilot Centurion here from one of the key vehicles in our collection is stored here just to have it safely inside. And it was all part of the project, the phase 2 of the new Second World War exhibition. We want to highlight the enormous technology progress during the Second World War, from basically Matilda 1 to Challenger 1, Centurion 1, sorry, even though it missed the actual conflict. But that's going back in after months in here, really.
And that's not running condition, that's just going to be sort of...
That's a static, that's just a key museum piece, and it's all about preservation, while of course the other vehicles is about maintenance, servicing, overhaul, restoration. And that's always the balance in the museum between key museum pieces, how do you look after them from a conservation point of view, what do you have to do to make sure they're safe and they're going to last a very long time and you don't alter them too much. And of course with the running fleet, being at the T-72 or the Centurion, you have to make those compromises. When do you replace parts, when do you make new parts, how do you service them, and how do you use them, how often do you use them, because that's all part of the challenge. So that's what makes this job here for the guys so interesting. They're all different vehicles, they all have different requirements, and we really need to know how often can we use them, how can we make sure we can still operate them safely in the future. For example, the T-72, we're working with outside specialists that have been trained on the T-72 rather than us reinventing the wheel.
It must be incredibly hard for the staff, because of course, it's all very well for us, we trained on Chieftain Challenger 1, Challenger 2, but I mean, when you've got such a variety of vehicles, you've got, all right, fundamentally a tank is very similar, but different, different transmissions, different gearboxes, different requirements. Spares must be an absolute nightmare, I would imagine. They're very, very skilled guys and girls, I assume, that work in here.
Yeah, absolutely. The volunteers and the staff, without them we couldn't do this. And now we're working as well more and more with other museums, other collections, historic collections from armies, to help us look after them the best as we can, with those that have arguably been trained on them. So we have a lot of knowledge, and we're gaining by working with all these partners as well to soak up some of their knowledge. And that's been really quite a successful formula, because they're all different. I mean, these are quite complex beasts. And spares, it's all about how can we make sure we still have a running fleet in 25 years' time. And that's one of the things we're actually working on, to make sure by the centenary of the Second World War we still have running vehicles.
Takes me back, Chris. Grease gun.
Yes. Any grease nipples you want lubricated? So a lot of our kit here, being at recovery, chains, cables, specialist tooling for the A-frames, a lot of material here. And next to us we have then the machine shop, where our machinist Bob Kendall does a lot of fantastic work, currently working on the Valentine suspension that Jonathan will talk more about.
So I assume when you say machine shop, you mean obviously there's going to be certain bits, like we sort of discussed before, that just don't exist anymore, you can't get spares for it, so they've got the ability here to make...
Yes, and we're doing that more and more, that items we can't purchase, we have remanufacturing here, and that's really going quite well. So we have a big lathe and a milling machine in here, and it's Bob and Jacob, used to be apprentice, now a technician, has also been a lot of machining and learning from the years of experience that Bob adds to our workshop setup here. So a lot of interesting stuff going on here as well.
Wow, it's absolutely fantastic.
It often takes a while, but because you have to make stuff, you get the drawings, you get the material, but it's really been a success story.
It's very clean and organised as well, Chris. Is it always like this?
Well, we knew you were coming, of course. We wanted to prepare. Well, unfortunately, of course, most of this year we have been static. And it's just great that the guys are back now, just before the end of the year. But we look forward to a busy year next year. Lots of things going on, lots of things lined up. And it's not just working on the vehicles. We're running once the display season starts, it gets very busy. All these guys operate the vehicles.
Sure,
But also it's sorting out parts, for example. We have stillages full of tracks, and mostly track pads and track links. And we're just sorting that out, making a big cataloging database and making sure they're all stored safely and that we actually know what they are. So that's what we're doing at the moment. So there's a lot of different things going on always here in the workshop, not just tinkering on the vehicles themselves, but spare storage.
What sort of stuff you got here, Chris? How many in total?
10 on the workshop floor.
Okay.
That includes 2 apprentices, and we've managed to take on our first apprentice this year.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Year 4 apprentice, Jacob, has now become our member of staff, which is really positive news. And so we're investing as well in the youngsters, and that's back to your early conversation, how many different skills needed and experience, you want that balance between operating and being able to fix it. So yeah.
So I think we're going to pop back inside now, aren't we?
Yeah, I'm going to introduce you to Jonathan Kneebone, that you'll know from the Tank Workshop Diaries and other episodes, and from your own Army career.
Indeed, me and John served together for many years.
So I'll pass you on to Jonathan. He is the project manager for some of the restoration projects here. There he is. Jonathan, Kneebone is the project manager for the restoration project. But of course you know John from your service life.
Lovely, thanks ever so much, Chris, really appreciate that, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again later on. Jonathan, how are you, my friend?
Very well, thank you.
Long time no see.
Hey, all right.
Very well, thanks, very well. So this looks all a bit chaotic at the moment. What's going on?
Yeah, well obviously we're reorganising things post-lockdown and furlough, and now we're going to start in the new year on the projects that we finished off prior to COVID. On your left here, on your right, you can see the Matilda, a successful project that we've done some years ago. If anyone wants to catch up on how we did it, it's on the YouTube on the Matilda Diaries.
I was an avid watcher of that, superb.
All 24 episodes, including episode 17, which of course was when I went out to Australia to get the parts that we needed to complete the job. Conversely here, over here, we've got the suspension parts from the Valentine tank, and you can see them all stripped up in various stages of repair as they were left before March. The engine over there, which is the 671 Detroit diesel, that was the first job that I did when I came to the Tank Museum in 2016, and that was a complete sort of rework, and the coolant system was redone, including the radiators. But sadly at the time we didn't have enough money in the kitty to do the suspension, even though it wanted doing. Thankfully, you know, the end of 2019 that money was found, and we started to you know, investigate the project and outsource all of the specialist seals that we need. And do the machining in the engineer shop, which you've already seen today.
I was saying this, Chris, earlier, John, it must be really hard because, of course, you know, you're not trained on any of this particular equipment or anything. So is it very much a, you know, take it apart and see how it works? And
it's very. So we get described as experts on all tanks. We're not. We only become competent on it when we work on it, and all we do is we redo all of the procedures that we've done on the restoration beforehand. So we hit the books, we find out how it works. It's interesting because like British tanks will have a certain way of building, and now they put them together. Americans, because they were very good at doing sort of online assembly, they're assembled in a different way. And then you get German vehicles which are extremely complicated, and you really have to sort of you know, scrunch up on the books before you can get going. But just to take you through, so not only are we going to do the suspension this time, but we've had a brand new fuel tank made. The old one, a beautiful piece of work with the rivets and the baffle plates inside, but we've got a new one made because the metal on that in certain places has got so thin now. We just, you know, it's not worth economical repair. So it's better to get a new one, put that one in, and we'll put this one in one of the vehicles that's in the museum because it's an original, and that vehicle doesn't have it. If you want to come on down, you can see that because all the suspension's off, we need to raise the hull and put it up onto elephant legs, as they're commonly called, and block the whole hull. Obviously the engine is out, the transmission and the engine is all one lump on this vehicle, but as you'll see when we move on to the Churchill, often you'll find that they're two assemblies. And from top to toe, it's all been stripped, and with a variety of machining and rubber seals, bearings, and it'll all get rebuilt. If you look here, you can see this vehicle was in a bog before it came to the Tank Museum, and some of the nuts on the back have actually rusted completely away. So we're going to use this opportunity, if you see the ones that are gone here, to replace them all with brand new ones, so that, you know, the whole suspension is a lot more solid than it was before. Down here, also we have problems with these oil seals. Over time they get scored, and as soon as you put the new seals back on them, because they've got score marks on, they tear the new seals apart. So these need to be completely refaced so that we get a...
So the aim of this is to get us back to running condition?
Yeah, it was running before, but it just got to the stage where it had been run for so long, you were doing more damage to it by running it than you were by stopping and saying, you know, we've got to The running gear is, you know, it takes all of the hard knocks of the tank, and it just gets to a point where you've just got to stop, strip it, and rebuild it if you want to run it into the future. It's a good example. You know, people enjoy seeing it. It's got a cracking engine in it. That one single engine has got more horsepower than the two that are fitted to the Matilda. It's a 671's good engine.
And how long do you reckon till this is?
Well,
is that an impossible question?
Well, originally we were given nearly a year to do it, but because of COVID and because of the season, we're really going to have to go some now to get this one ready and the other projects that we have to sort.
So I'd like to see it at TANKFest then, John, is what I'm asking.
Who knows? Who knows? But if we go over here on the bench, you'll see. Now, again, if you look at the workshop diaries, there was some time ago we done some work on the Churchill Trust's Churchill Mark III, and we got that back up into a running condition. That wasn't a restoration, it was just to get it going, and we got it running really well, and it's done a number of events now, but unfortunately on the last Tiger Day we had a catastrophic failure of the clutch housing. And essentially what it did is one of the support legs broke and it threw the entire mechanism into the flywheel, which did all kinds of damage to, you can see here on the clutch fingers, those should be straight.
Wow.
And it knocked off some of the casting on here. Now, in order to repair all this, because it's cast metal, we've got to go down an avenue that we've never done before, which is to go actually to foundries and get pattern makers to make the patterns that we need to replace all these parts and cast them in cast iron, which is the original material, although I'm reliably informed that now it's about 40% stronger than it was then. Obviously, this isn't a cheap way to do business, but we're quite excited because if we can open these lines of communication and get these castings done, then not only can we use it to get this one back on the road, but we can use it for future projects that would have normally been shelved because it was too hard to get the parts. Yeah, so you can see, you know, an awful lot of work to do here. Even on these bell cranks, you can see that they're broken as well. So you know, it really was, as failures go, it was quite, quite a bad one. Yeah. And over here is the vehicle itself. In order to get access to all of that, the engine and the gearbox had to come out, which you can see on the side here. Unlike the Valentine, the engine and gearbox are two completely different units. You know, quite a challenge to get that one out, but we also taken the opportunity, because we knew we had a leak in one of the fuel tanks, because we can get through the radiators now and get at that fuel tank. We want to replace and repair that, which we've set up here. And the fuel tank, what we've done is we've made an adapter to go on the top here so that we can pressurize it with air. And then we put a leak detector along the cracks here, and that allows us to identify where exactly we've got the leaks. And another job, because we can get this fuel tank out, we can get access to the forward fuel tank, which means we can fix the fuel indicator so we know how much fuel is in it from now on, because it takes the guesswork. We don't want to put too much expensive avgas in there and leave it there for years that we're not going to need it.
So having worked on this, John, and obviously thinking back to our days together in the regiment, I mean, was this more complicated, less complicated, easier to work on, harder to work on?
Well, it's a completely different ethos. I mean, when we had a problem with a chieftain or a challenger,
we
go to Remy, and not only that, but they, you know, more often than not, they would take the whole assembly out, or at least change one duck egg blue box, and then another duck egg blue box would appear. Most of what we were dealing with was managed by ones and zeros. This is all mechanics and you know, your entry level, you know, vehicle electrics. So it's quite an experience for me, going from modern day kit and coming back here, because you know you really have got to hit the books and sort of decode how it's done. A lot of these vehicles were made at the start of the war where they didn't have enough time to manufacture the individual parts, so they would get parts that were being made from other factories and just bring them onto the tank. A good example of this is with the Matilda, because the dashboard lights, the interior lights on the Matilda were actually Bentley dashboard lights, and one of the braking systems for the seat, the commander seat, in order to go up and down, we discovered was used by a bicycle company, and they were just grabbing this stuff off of the shelf and trying to get it into the tank. And you and I both know that you know, road wheels from Centurions and such were still being used all the way through, you know, up through Chieftains. Maintenance lights were exactly the same, and so on.
Have you had a favourite, John, you've worked on to date?
I get asked this question a lot, and to be honest, without trying to sit on the fence, there are engines that I like to work on from some tanks, there are turrets that are nice from others. I haven't found one tank that all of the components of it are a standout one yet, but there are many bits within all of the tanks that I've worked on that have been, you know, really quite challenging and quite rewarding to fix.
Well, I mean, all I can say is, John, I mean, you know, kudos to you and the guys down there. It's absolutely amazing, and you are, you know, in my mind, the unseen heroes of the Tank Museum.
Thank you very much.
And so thank you for everything that you do.
Nice, thank you.
And we're lucky enough now to be joined by Mr. Jonathan Kneebone himself, John Kneebone. I never call him Jonathan. Thank you so much for joining us, John. Well, I have to say, when I came down here, because you've been down the museum quite a while now, haven't you?
About 4 years.
About 4 years. The first time I came down, I didn't actually realise, myself and John served together in the Royal Tank Regiment many, many moons ago. You joined in around about... 85, I think I was 83 to 84, so we joined at the same time, we almost left at the same time. So we've got a lot of catching up to do. We were discussing this segment beforehand. Obviously, there's a lot of stories we can't share with you, because we'd be in big trouble, I think, for many, many reasons. But I think something you will enjoy, John. We contacted the Royal Tank Regiment. We said, do you fancy joining us this evening with a quick Christmas message? And they sent us a very short VT, which I think you'll really, really enjoy. So let's just have a quick look at a Christmas wish from the Royal Tank Regiment.
Merry Christmas from all ranks of the Royal Tank Regiment.
Impressive.
Fantastic. So, John, how are you finding it? How's the job down here? Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Quite a challenge, especially over the past year, because a lot of our projects have been put on hold, and now we've got to pick up where we left off and hope all the parts are in the same place where we left them so many months ago. It's a new day every day. It's a new challenge every day, and much the same as what we were used to back in the day. So yeah, enjoying it immensely.
And thank you so much for showing me around the workshops. I have to say, for me, it's the bit obviously the general public don't see, but it is, you know, let's be fair, the backbone of the museum with your working fleet, the fleet that you need to go running, or even just obviously stacked displays and everything. So it's a lot of effort there.
We tend to every now and again be the defibrillator of the museum and get the heart rate going. You know, there's a lot of history in the place. Part of the history is covered by archives. Our own learned associates, David, Willey and co, are very good at the theory side. I think maintaining and running the vehicles tells part of the story of them as well, and I'm very proud to be a part of it.
Now, it is Christmas. We've been asking every single guest, Christmas wish list, obviously a tank, you can say anything else, but it's a tank we're after.
I struggle with this one, I'll be honest with you. The thing I'd most like is a new fuel tank for my Indian motorcycle, because mine's getting a bit rusty now, a bit like my own. The tank that I'd most like to restore or it would be the Shah B. You'll remember a couple of tank fests ago you sponsored one coming across. A couple of reasons. It's really impressive, that sort of outline with the track going around the vehicle. It gives a real good impression of the inertia of the vehicle. You know, it's quite dynamic. We don't have any running French exhibits at the moment. And as for my wish list for the collection, I think it would be really nice to have something like a ZS234 or a Gepard, or even the Marksman, if we could get hold of that, because we don't really have an anti-aircraft vehicle here, and it would be nice to have one of those.
Well, that's quite an unusual wants list there. Quite
Yeah,
compact.
yeah, well, I've got to be original considering the rest of the people that are coming on or have been on before.
And the Churchill project, let's finish off with mentioning that.
Yeah, we got that one, and you know, it wasn't a restoration, as I said to you in the workshop. It was just get it going and get it reliably running, which we did. Unfortunately, you know, there was a failure in one of the brackets, which is down to metallurgy, not to mechanics, and now we find ourselves with quite a task. In order to fix that, we've got to go down a completely different route than what we have done before, in the fact that we've got to go to specialist pattern makers and casters to, you know, and forge this thing for us. It makes me very excited in a way, because it adds another string to our bow as a restoration department, but it is expensive, and because of that expense, we'd be very keen to if you could tune into tankmuseum.org/tankmas.
You're reading that.
You can tell I don't get paid for this. And give us $5,000, please, or even more, and then we can get this thing forged. We can make a couple more for other collectors, and it'll you know, it'll take a pathway for future restorations, because we'll be able to have that capability.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, John. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything you do for the museum. And we're going to have to catch up on a few beers at some stage. We're now going to go across and look at our next museum. We're going all the way to Finland, and we're going to meet up with the Finnish Tank Museum, Parola.
Dear friends, greetings from Finland and the Finnish Tank Museum. The Parola Armour Museum parades the achievements of Finnish armoured and anti-tank troops with pride. Soon 60 years old museum has an extensive collection of armoured vehicles, anti-tank weapons and other museum items, not to forget one of the largest armoured trains in the world. We have on display, for example, this iconic Renault FT model 1917 tank. Our collection consists of large number of Russian origin weapons. These Soviet-era war monsters are located in these indoor halls as well as under the shelters outdoors. Our speciality is a large collection of Sturmgeschütz assault guns. If somebody intends to visit Parola during the summertime, one might be lucky to see some of these old ladies moving around museum's showground. The Parola Armory Museum has a nice bunch of quite rare armored vehicles too. One of those might already be familiar for most of you, namely PT-42, a hybrid tank, Russian origin chassis and English 140mm howitzer as a main gun. All put together by Finns during the wartime, with the result which really wasn't the best in the world. But at least the tank looks quite sympathetic, doesn't it? I think quite few of you are aware that there was also a kind of sibling tank to PT-42. In March 1943, the Armored Division made a proposal to General Headquarters to modify 20 captured PT tanks into armored personnel carriers. After some bends, Armored Center was to design this APC and finally got a permission to build a prototype with a wooden platform on top of BT-7 hull. The fighting compartment was also used as a cargo space and covered with hatches. Quite a gadget, which was delivered to Assault Battalion in October 1943. 1943. Obviously, the trials were not very successful, as only the prototype was built and finally scrapped in May 1945. BT-43 is the one the Parola Armory Museum has on Santa's wish list. We do understand that it's quite a challenging task for Santa to find a tank like this, but we have very strong trust on his skills. As a matter of fact, this kind of armored sledge could be very useful for Santa when delivering Christmas presents to children in harsh circumstances on Christmas Eve. Well, nevertheless, it would be very nice and we would be very grateful if Santa would deliver us a photograph of this peculiar tank, since we don't have any so far. Only this drawing here can tell us how it looked like roughly 75 years ago. In the meantime, we wish you all
Merry Christmas!
Please visit our web pages and social media.
So Richard, you've been out there to Parola. Is that the trousers Finns wear, is it?
We thought you were going to make... I'm making no comment about the trousers on there.
Well, that was our good friend Simo there out in Parola, which again, amazing collection they have there. And RT3476, that's on loan from that collection, so that's over here at the moment. So thank you very much to the Finns there. Now, we're going to come on to something. I know some of you in the comments, we've had a chance to have a quick look at some of the comments. A lot of people asking, David Fletcher, is he going to appear? Well, we've got a little interview we're going to put on now for you, which is talking... I asked David Fletcher a few questions about his background, what got him interested in tanks, and if you're particularly interested as well, we're going to show the whole of that as an interview in January on the Tank Museum's YouTube channel. But to start the ball rolling, we've got here a little, I think it's about 7 minutes long, little clip now of asking David Fletcher some questions.
Just give us a little bit about your background. Where were you born and what was the family and everything?
Born in Petswood, 1942. That was 1,000,000 years ago at least. My father was in the London Fire Brigade, but in advertising when he wasn't putting out fires. Went to boarding school down in Sandwich in Kent when I was old enough, about 10. And my father was killed in the train crash in London in 1957. And that's why we came down here. And never went to university or anything like that.
What did you do next then, when you left school?
I worked for an advertising agency in London for a while.
Doing what sort of thing?
Oh, sort of like an errand boy, really.
Like a runner in one of the offices type of thing? Oh, right. Quick synopsis of those early
that's
jobs.
What you need, isn't it? I did that in London. I came down here and we started a shop. Then I joined the Royal Navy, which was the silliest thing I've ever done. And I got myself evicted from that, as it were. I went back to the shop. Then I went to Australia for 5 years. And I was there for 5 years. I loved it.
Right. And where did you go and what did you do?
I was in Melbourne for a while, driving trams, just to show how ridiculous a job can be.
And do you like the Australian lifestyle?
Oh, I did very much, yes. That suited me well. It was only the lack of history that made me come back, really. When I came back, as soon as I got any sort of transport, I used to go off looking at hill forts and things like that.
Did you do it with other people? Did you join a club or society?
Not me, I've done things on my own and I prefer it that way. I've always been sort of interested in things from the past. In a way, it's more the transport of the past, but also ancient history interests me as well. And that was what got me wanting to see the places I'd read about.
What's your first connection that you can remember to Bovington and tanks?
Oh, I can that's quite easy. I have still a friend, a school friend, who joined the army. And he came down to stay with us one day and said, oh, he said, there's a tank museum near here somewhere. I've been there. I'll show you where it is. So we came out here and I thought, well, it's quite interesting, have a wander around. And after a couple of visits, I began to think, well, here's a subject that nobody's taking seriously or has any interest in. As I said before, railways, which have always been the dominating thing in my life, you found that there were hundreds of people on the scene writing railway books, and there was nothing to research as far as I could see. Whereas with the tanks, the world was one's oyster. There was nobody
coming along.
Most of the staff were people who'd been in the services and were just eking out their last few days, more or less. I came in one day as a volunteer, just doing my own thing, and the curator at the time, who was George Forty, said, oh, he said, Mrs. Pigeon's leaving the shop. She was the secretary and the shop manageress, and she'd decided to retire. And he said, would you like the job? And I said, yeah, would I? So I said, shouldn't I have an interview or do something? Oh, no, he said, no, I've said it now. You've got the job. So I said, oh, it's easy as that, is it? And no sooner had I got the job, more or less running the shop, than Ken Hill, who was effectively the library manager, was taken ill, and I had to do the librarian's job as well, which the two things suited me down to the ground. I used to write little bits and pieces for magazines, mainly for hobby magazines, which were very limited in those days. And it was only after I started working here, and I worked under George Forty, who was himself a qualified author by then, and he was the one who said to me, you ought to start writing books. I thought, God, how terrifying, me writing books. And in no time at all, I'd done 2 or 3. There's some people who can write and some who can't. And I've never had a problem. I've never had a lesson in me life, as they say.
You were doing these tank chats here at the museum, and there you are on YouTube. Now, you've become a little bit of a cult figure. Do you get any sort of thrill from that idea? You are sharing your knowledge, but in a different way now, not just the writing, but it's in a different area.
I never think of it in that way. The strange thing is, and I've said this before, that if you're interviewed by a child, and they seem to be, they're all children to me, but you know, they're probably in their late teens, maybe early 20s. But if you're interviewed by them, you begin to wonder what they see so fascinating in an old man. And it's that really, it's very strange. But to suddenly find that at this age. I tell you what really amazed me, and that is actually being stopped in the woods. I go for a walk in the woods every morning, and I get stopped by people who say, haven't you seen you on the computer? And I say, oh, no, can't be me, it must be somebody else. And oh, they say, you do those tank chats. I said, well, yeah. Well, my husband watches them all the time. He thinks they're terrific fun. Oh, really? Bloke must be mad. But it's that sort of thing, being actually stopped by people in the street who say, you're the guy on television, that sort of thing.
So obviously you carry on doing tank chats for us?
Well, I've been told that when I reach the age that I'm incapable of walking in here, they'll wheel me in to do them. I really think I'm too old. I think somebody else ought to take over. But at the moment, no, I'm very much in demand, so I've got to keep going.
Well, I'd probably say on behalf of those watching, number one is, yes, absolutely, terribly sorry about that, but you must keep going because they still appreciate and still watch it. And I'd also say, just on behalf of the Tank Museum staff, everything else, thank you so much, and thanks for the interview.
Pleasure.
So if you want to see more of that interview, we're going to be doing a much longer version that you'll be able to see on the Tank Museum's YouTube channel that'll be coming out in January 2021. So I think it's about time for another competition.
Another competition, absolutely. And for this particular competition, so the first prize is the fantastic Panzer IIJ premium tank in-game. And the other prize is one of these, David, and we were actually discussing this later on. This is a Tiger 1 hang-long model, 1/16 scale. These are absolutely fantastic. They're a lot of fun, so we've already decided, myself and David, that, of course, if you don't want to enter this particular competition, the choice is entirely yours.
Well, actually, we can do that in a slightly different way. So here's the competition. And if you didn't hear it, sorry, tough. But that's another way we could do it anyway. But no, we won't cheat. We'll try and be nice with you. So the big one for this evening then, for that particular one, is a fairly simple question for some of you. How many crew members served on a Panzer IV? So how many crew members served on a Panzer IV? That's going to be that competition. So get that one in, and you know how you enter it.
And just a reminder how you enter it again, of course, put it into the chat, whether it's World of Tanks or whether it's the Tank Museum, get it in chat there. You've got the time it takes for us to get across to answer. Good luck.
So we're going to go and have yet another walk around. This time we're going to head towards our Panzer IV. So follow us this way, and hopefully we'll get there safely. So here we go again, walking backwards, heading this direction. Now, one of that question was about tank crews, and I know obviously you've been a tank crew in your service life. One of the things we've talked about on a number of occasions, say it time and time again, all these tanks here are literally only as good, or they only be made as good as the crew that's in it. What do you think about, you met Jonathan there. Did you actually serve in the same vehicle at one point?
We were never in the same vehicle. We were in the same troop at one particular point. So yeah, it was it's one of those things in the army, because you tend to lose track of people when you leave, and then you come round to these sort of places, particularly down at Bombington. You're always bumping into people you know.
And that business because I always remember interviewing a veteran one time, and in fact we got the quote up on the wall where he said there's not an awful lot of things I can remember these days. He was a Second World War veteran, he says, but I can still remember the names of my own tank crew. And that idea, because you're such a close-knit bunch once you're in a vehicle, aren't you?
It's probably like any other part of the army I'm sort of thinking about, to be honest, because you're in that crew, however many your particular crew, obviously for us in the British Army, it was the 4 tank crew all the time. But you get to know everybody so well. You're sometimes sleeping in the turret together, or you're certainly on the back deck sleeping. You're eating together, you're working together, you're fighting, you may go in conflict together. So although you work as troops, and although obviously troops work as the squadrons, and the squadrons as the battle group, and all the rest of it, the big picture, when it comes down to it, you feel quite almost isolated when you're inside the turret there with the rest of the crew. And of course, a lot of people talk about there's an awful lot of boredom in any part of the armed forces. It's probably 2 seconds of complete chaos and panic, filled by the rest of it is just, what's happening now? Nothing. It's all hurry up and wait. So, yeah, it's an odd thing. And I always think, and I have to say, although I'm not a big fan of comparing anything to movies, when that feel you got from Fury, the movie, about the crew working together, I thought that was actually a really good part of the movie. You sort of got that feel that they did do. They were a crew and they were working together.
And they did that purposely, because they actually got together well before the filming to actually get on with each other, to understand each other and that. But that idea, you've been into combat in a tank, that idea that it's also, you're relying, because if there's a weak link in that crew, you're done for.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course you've got, the loose setup is the commander is the experienced guy. Of course it is. The commander is the one who's done all the other trades. So the trades, loosely, quickly speaking, the gunner, the driver, he is the man that knows about everything, and also done a commander's course. So he's got the tactical situational awareness and that sort of thing as well. And usually the junior guy in the crew will be something like either the driver or the gunner. When I started off, my very first job was a gunner on a Chieftain tank. Not Conqueror, as I know some people have said sometimes, but it was a gunner on a Chieftain tank. So yeah, and you totally and utterly rely on each other to do everything and do everything well. But it's the commander really who takes responsibility and really moulds the crew together. Although there's lots of things for him to do, one of the critical things is to make sure, A, your crew's happy, because there's nothing worse than a crew that's not happy, otherwise you just don't perform particularly well. And also to make sure that he's aware of the bigger situational picture. And everybody else has got their different jobs to worry about, whether it's the driver looking for places to travel to. Or...
And I think that thing as well about all being essential to make that vehicle, because again, do you take any of that? Because with working for World of Tanks, is there anything in the game that you think you take?
Yeah, I always say, people ask quite a lot, obviously, what's the similarities? Now, of course, World of Tanks it's not a simulator. And I'm glad it's not a simulator, because having spent a lot of my life training on simulators, they are really boring. So you wouldn't want to have a simulator as a game. But, when you're talking about situational awareness, where you position your vehicle, critical thing in real life, critical thing in the game as well. So always, very easy things like keeping the frontal armour, the strongest armour, facing towards the enemy threat. Picking a good position of, we always say enfilade fire from a defilade position. So if you can, at all shooting down on there. Picking the positions to hide. So obviously the ideal situation is where you can just fire over, the rest of the tank is hidden behind something. Communication is quite important. Now, obviously in the real world, as a tank crewman, communication is everything, whether it's not just inside your crew, but also, of course, to troop sergeant, troop leader, troop corporal, whoever you're working with as well, and obviously from the commander's level again up to squadron leader, the battle group, and all the rest of it. Otherwise, you just don't know what's going on. But so yeah, that's sort of the things that I think really is similar to the game. And teamwork, of course. I mean, we haven't mentioned teamwork, but it's all about working together.
Well, one thing that we were all aware of is that obviously a lot of the guys serving today actually play the games as well, and the military are obviously very keen to actually get some of those skills. What is it? Challenger 2, sort of like gunnery station is almost
the dexterity. Because of course, when we first, obviously, I feel super old when we're talking about this, but you go back a bit, and I had what was called duplex controllers when we first started. Now, when you traverse the turret, you've got a grip switch and a thumb controller, and that traverses the turret, elevates the main armour, and on the back of there, you've also got firing switch, etc., etc. But when I first started, there was a duplex switch, which is just basically, it was clunk for left, clunk for right, clunk for back, and forwards as well. And you need to have, you need to be quite good. And of course, everybody who plays on games, whether it's console or PC or anything, that dexterity and that, hand-to-eye coordination is actually honed, and it's very, very good. So make really good gunners on tanks, yeah.
So there you go. If you're a gamer out there and you fancy joining up, hone those skills.
Sounds like a marketing piece.
So anyway, we're here now at our Panzer IV in the museum, and what we've got here is a tank that was really the workhorse of the German military in the Second World War. And I asked the question a little bit earlier on, so what was the crew numbers for a Panzer IV? And when you look at it, again, you were a part of a crew of 4. We tended to lose one crew member. Here they had 2 at the front, 3 in the turret. So it's 5 is the answer. If you got that right, give yourself a pat on the back. 5 crew members in a Panzer IV in the Second World War German tank. So, and this one, pride and joy here, very nice tank. And have a look if you're interested. If you want to know more, have a look at our tank chat on the Panzer IV. Now, over to you again, Richard.
And now we're going to go back to some more music, I do believe, with the vintage Vixen. So, sit back, get the kettle on and enjoy.
I don't want a lot for Christmas. There is just one thing I need.
I don't care about the presents underneath the Christmas tree.
I just want you for my own, more than you could ever know. Make my wish come true. All I want for Christmas is you. I don't want a lot for Christmas. There is just one thing I need. I don't care about the presents underneath the Christmas tree. I don't need to hang my stocking there upon the fireplace. Santa Claus will make me happy with a toy on Christmas Day. I just want you for my own, more than you could ever know. Make my wish come true. All I want for Christmas is you. I won't ask for much this Christmas. I won't even ask for snow. I just want to keep on waiting underneath the mistletoe. I won't make a list and send it to the North Pole for St. Nick. I won't even stay awake to hear those magic reindeer click. Cause I just want you here tonight, holding on to me so tight. What more can I do? All I want for Christmas is you. shining brightly everywhere. And the children's laughter fills the air. And everyone is singing. I can hear those sleigh bells ringing. Santa wants spring with the one I really need. I don't want a lot for Christmas, this is all I'm asking for. 'Cause I just want to see my baby standing right outside my door. I just want you for my own, more than you can ever know. Make my wish come true. All I want for Christmas is you. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas with you.
On Karelia, a T110E5 enters a barrel measuring contest. Cavalier is about to put their money where their mouth is in this ranked match. A1 seems like a natural place for a tank like this to open up the game, with hold down and RT cut. Hey! However, with the cautious nature of ranked battles, meaning no side is willing to commit, damage has to be found elsewhere. But not quite there. Things are looking ever more bleak by the moment. Cavalier stands outnumbered and outmatched against the upcoming Red Onslaught. These enemies just keep on coming. The E-Honda makes the move, as does the Progetto. Incredible! The monster falls to our brave hero without doing a shot of damage. But with reinforcements arriving and the supply of heat running dry, it's going to take more than just bravery to pull this off. The EBR did what it could, but with opponents on two sides, is this the end? No! Cavalier refuses to give up and rushes to Patton instead. No way! The STRV signs its death sentence, and all of a sudden, Cavalier only has the 2 RT between them and victory. Definitely pulling the lion's share for the team here. But Sixth Sense quickly reminds our hero that it's not truly over until the fat lady sings, or in this case, the RT dies. Instead of a foolish charge, a more subtle approach is needed. The auto-loading Batchat is the first one to lose their cool. Ambush! The GW plants a shell into the ground, leaving our lion on 10 HP. Yes! Cavalier does not miss and seals this ranked match with barely 2 shells remaining. GG. To turn around a game alone against 4 tanks is a feat, but to do it in ranked, now that's an achievement worth featuring on Best Replays of the Week. Congratulations, Cavalier! We hope to see more of the same.
So we are here again, actually, and if you missed it, there was us talking pearls of wisdom, but the answer to the question, if we were cut off there, terribly sorry, it was 5. A Panzer crew has 5 crew members in, so that was the answer to the previous competition bit. So sorry if you missed that, and I gather that you had some entertaining little sort of walkthroughs as we weren't there. Anyway, on to, there was a bit of technical difficulties, I think the term is, on to our next little film, which we've got from our friends at the War Heritage Institute out in Belgium, and Danny is going to be showing us his little footage there. Danny did a work placement here, and even though it's got better, his haircut is still pretty awful, so apologies for that, but over to the War Heritage Institute in Belgium.
Hi, welcome to Brussels. We are here in the former Royal Army Museum, which is now the War Heritage Institute. This museum is located right in the center of Brussels in a beautiful park. The War Heritage Institute is Belgium's national organization for war history, heritage and remembrance. We house an enormous collection of over 130,000 pieces, all related to Belgium's eventful military history. We display a diverse collection of pieces such as medieval arms and armor, uniforms, weaponry, airplanes, and last but not least, tanks. This collection is spread out over several locations all across Belgium, including the famous Bastogne Barracks, where we keep our vehicles of the Second World War. In this video, we would like to give you a small sample of what we have to offer. Today, I would like to find the perfect tank decoration to put on the Christmas tree. With technology, this vehicle will do just fine as our Christmas tank to put under the tree. Since we will now have some new exhibition space, since this vehicle will be moving, we would like for our Christmas wish tank something of equal grandiosity to put here. So we were thinking we would like to wish for a tiger tank, or maybe a Merkava, something of that size. I'd like to thank our colleagues in Bovington for the invitation to be your guest here today. If you want to keep in touch with our museum, please visit our website or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter or YouTube. We wish you all a Merry Christmas and a happy and healthy New Year. Goodbye.
Robbie, what did I say, Danny? So that was Robbie, and I do apologise, I called him Danny, I think. We've got all our notes in the wrong order, so Robbie's apologies, but sorry about the haircut as well. Anyway, so there's another wonderful museum you can go and have a look at, and you can see the quality of the stuff they have there, especially at Bastogne where their tanks are. Fantastic collection. Now, another bit that Richard saw earlier in the week, another bit of the collection behind the scenes was our small arms. So we've got a nice little bit now with Stuart showing some of the small arms, the guns, secondary armament, the other weapons that tanks carried. So here's a bit more footage from behind the scenes at the Tank Museum.
So Stuart, back with you, and I believe you're going to give us a bit of an insight into some of the small arms you've got down here.
Yes, Richard. We've got a lot of the secondary weapons here that would go actually into the tanks and to basically complement their main armament. This is one actually we purchased last year. This is a DT machine gun. This would go in your tanks like the T-34. You can see the difference between this and the DP really is the size of the magazine panel on top, the pan on top, and also the armoured barrel that you get with the DT. Obviously, once you put machine guns into tanks, they need to be able to survive the sort of weapons that are coming against them and small arms fire that are attacking them. So having an armoured barrel makes a big difference on it and increases the longevity, the life.
I was going to say, you mentioned you bought this one, Stuart. I was going to ask, so the rest of this collection, where do you actually get them from? Where do you find them?
So a lot of these are what we would call war booty.
Yep.
They've come back from various different wars. Some of the MG08s we have here, these are collected as trophies. Some are collected as examples, so you can actually see. So we'll have things like MG34s, MG42s. The idea is that you get them back onto the tanks. That's what I'd rather have these weapons actually appearing on the actual tanks themselves. So when you go around looking at the tanks, Richard, you actually see them on the actual tanks doing the job that they're supposed to do. But we have things here like the Beezer. This will be going actually into the British tanks of the World War II period. And so they're here, and you've got other weapon systems, as you can see. So we've got the MG34s, we've got the Hotchkiss gun here. You've seen those in the First World War on the Mark IV tanks. And we've even got things like the 66mm Laws weapon. That if you've seen anyone at one of the Dirty Harry movies, he actually fires at over in San Francisco. So this sort of shows the sort of level of weapon systems that we've got. And a lot of these have been inherited. They've come through, they've been there as technical items to actually inform and instruct various people as well. Some of them will get sectioned, but some of them are just that sort of that whole collector's thing about having the items in the collection. And the key thing for us here is, unfortunately, is that we have to have them deactivated so they're not able to fire anymore.
Sure, sure. That's an amazing collection you got there.
I'll show you a couple of examples that I've got for you to handle as well on the small arms side of things, and these are more for crew weapons. So the weapon I have here is the Enfield. This is basically the Mark II #1 Star. And this is the revolver that was issued in 1938 to tank crews, so to the Tank Corps, so your predecessors. And basically, what happened was they had the Webley in the First World War, and this was effectively a copy that they made in World War II to try and reduce basically the pressure you needed to fire off of that trigger. But the other thing they did was they changed basically this part here, the comb, which actually had a trigger for your thumb, and basically pulling that back, what they found was when that was actually on your person, it was catching on the tank. So what they did was they went to a double action with the actual mechanism here, so you didn't need to have that thumb pull there to actually be seen. So gives you an idea of the type of weapon, the personal weapon that tank crews during World War II would be issued with.
And a great weapon. They all said how reliable it was and robust. I mean, it just feels robust.
It feels robust. It's .38 caliber. Has a capability. You want that ability to basically have something on you if you depart the tank that you can actually use to defend yourself. So basically, we go back World War II. We've got things like the Sten, and we've got the Sterling machine gun. A George Patchett invention, and basically this is something you would be familiar with.
I was going to say, when you said World War II and then brought this in straight away, I felt really old then, because this is, actually one of the first weapons that I was actually trained in, so the good old SMG. Now, of course, for Russian tanks, it was all about fitting them in the tank. SMG had a folding stock as well. Was it a good weapon? Well, yes, it was certainly super reliable. I mean, it has been known again that you could actually knock in a track pin with one of these and it would still fire quite effectively afterwards. But it wasn't particularly accurate. Stopping power was nothing whatsoever, but it was a good, robust little gun to have in the turret with you. Yeah, I mean, it was a good weapon. Ish.
Ish. Yeah, 9mm, so it had a little bit of potency in it. And the one we purchased, again, this was about 3 years ago. This is a weapon that we saw, we wanted to have in the collection because we've got so many T-tanks. So this is the SKS-47U. This is the Russian, basically, weapon that they would have had in helicopters and also armoured vehicles. And again, it's got the stock that we wanted to fold.
Yeah,
in.
and if you look, I mean, just comparing it to something like the SMG, I mean, you can see there that it's sort of, you know, what, roughly about the same length, but when you fold the stock down, it's absolutely tiny little weapon, isn't it? And it just feels, you know, it feels like it's a decent, solid weapon. Very nice indeed.
Yeah, it's a nice small weapon. It's only got a limited range of about 200 metres, but again, something very capable to give you a feeling of confidence in defending yourself, and it's that small nature that it just basically packs all the way down, and you can fold these stocks down, and that's really where we're getting to. We've got something that small, which in the compartment of your vehicle is really going to stowage-wise is going to be very minimal impact on you. Yeah, we always had problems with stowage there because obviously, you know, some of the guns, especially like the SE-80s, you know, the first when they first came out, it was a bit too delicate for a tank crew, and they break fairly easily. So you needed something robust. And we always said, of course, Stuart, I mean, as a tank crew, if you're relying on this, then you're in big trouble. So yeah, this is the problem, isn't it? You don't really want to be relying on
exactly. Yeah, you want it to be in the turret and staying in there, really.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Stuart. That's really, really interesting.
Now, what you saw there is just a minute part of what the museum have got in their supporting collection. And David has been kind enough to bring a couple of quite unusual items across here now. Now, one of them he's thrust at my feet here. Straight away, just looking at it, has made my ears start to hurt, David, I have to say, is the crew bone dome.
Yeah, one of the interesting things, because obviously we collect stuff here that shows a history of, you know, you wore that, or did you ever wear it? Because they were popular, were they?
We were issued these, and they were, it was an absolutely awful design, it really was. I mean, I'm not sure what you can see on there, but even to put it on was quite awkward, because you have to pull the earmuffs inside there to get it on. So to be perfectly frank, the only people on tank crew that ever wore it most of the time, not even all the time, was the crew commander, of course, because he may have his head outside the turret so people could see him in there. But as a gunner, which I was when these particular bone domes were around, they were just so impractical. You just could not get your head far enough into the sight to make it practical to use it. So we just wore our berries all the time inside. So yeah, awful. And as I said, just looking at it, David, my ears are starting to hurt just looking at it.
So one of the other issues we have here at the Tank Museum is that type of helmet. Part of the problem of that helmet was that the crews didn't like it. They didn't wear it, so head injuries went up. And it's one of the items we use as teaching aids with the modern army, which is things have to be functional and work properly, because then people will actually use them. So with a new designed helmet, it wasn't because the quality of the helmet was better, it was because the soldiers didn't feel an idiot wearing it, which this one they tended to do, so they didn't put it on as much. Now, one of the other items we've picked up as well, which is, I've just brought across here, every time the army puts a new piece of kit into service, they actually, with certain items, they put an item that they stamp as the pattern. It's the example, as it were, that they can go back and refer to if they has to. And there's a couple of lovely ones here. This is the Army's pattern till it came out of service some years ago. I think the earliest date I can find it is early in the 1950s. But that wonderful little ring there is actually a washer. And all these labels and this beautiful wax seal is because that is the Army's pattern washer for that size. So that's one of those weird and wonderful items that we managed to get when the pattern room was having a clear out. And another one of those items, because for the military, here's a mouse trap, or it could even be a rat trap, it's quite sizable, but that was the Army's pattern rat trap. And I think the original date of this one goes back to almost just after the First World War. So another one of those weird and wonderful things, but things that we've collected because they reflect that bigger picture of the Army overall. Anyway, just a couple of lovely objects there. Now, what have we got going on for next then?
So we're now going to go across to another museum, and I believe you're a big fan of this particular
I
museum.
do. Now, we're trying to work out how we can get out there. This is Franz, who's at the Military History Institute. I can't even say in Austrian the full title of it, but here's a man who knows how to dress as well, so I'm really pleased at how he's turned up. And this is the Military History Institute out in Vienna.
Hello from the Austrian Army Museum in Vienna. We are one of the oldest military museums in the world, and the museum was built in the 1850s. It opened in 1872, and the building is in neoclassic Greek-inspired style and contains collections from the 1600s until today. The first exhibition was made of the weapons and trophy collections of the emperors of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. From the 30 Years' War to the Napoleonic Wars, the history of the Austrian soldier is told. One of the most interesting objects in a museum is, of course, of European importance, the car and the uniform of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was assassinated in Sarajevo in 1914. The exhibition about World War I tells stories of mountain warfare and the horrors of the trench war against Russia. The museum contains also a collection of the Austrian Navy until 1918. The Austrian Army of the Republic from 1919 to 1938 is presented together with the exhibition about World War II from 1939 to 1945. The Today's Austrian Army was created in 1955, and the exhibition about the new army goes until 1991. The recently opened Tank Hall presents 36 running armored fighting vehicles, starting with the idea of Lieutenant Burstein's motorized gun in 1912 to the main battle tank Leopard 2 A4 of the modern Austrian army. Hello from Vienna. It's Christmas time in 2020, a quite difficult year for us all. So what are the wishes for Christmas this year from the curator of a tank collection? First of all, visitors again. People in our museums, because we were closed for a long time. And some tanks, of course. It's a tank collection. First of all, our collection misses an Italian vehicle, a CV-33, which was the first tank the Austrian Republic procured in 1936. A very special tank and a very special one for Austria. The second wish for Christmas will be a Mark tank. Of course, best Mark IV, because in Austria, in Vienna, we had one on display in 1917. It was captured on the Western Front by the Germans and lent to the Austrians for evaluation trials. It was on display in Vienna for several months and then handed back to the Germans. But the most important wishes for our collections are the last two. One is an engine for our T-34. The Austrian Army had from 1956 to 1964 23 Russian T-34 vehicles, but none of them is now running. All the engines were sold in the 1960s, and we are restoring now for a long time one of these tanks, but we have troubles with the engine. So we're looking for an engine for a long time to bring our T-34 back into running condition. And the last wish for us, a set of tracks for an M36 Jackson. This vehicle went into a lake in 1945, in September 1945, in Western Austria, and was recovered in the 1980s, but the tracks were missing from that time. So the vehicle will be a non-runner, but a very, very important vehicle for our museum on display. But without tracks, it's not easy to handle and not easy to display the vehicle. So these are our wishes for Christmas 2020. At least I'd like to thank you for your attendance. Thank you, Bovington, for giving us the chance to participate in this video. So Merry Christmas and see you soon in Vienna. see you in the oldest military museum of the world, because wars belongs to museums.
Well, there's a fashion icon for you. That's and that was our Grizzly tank on loan to Vienna from the Tank Museum.
But what a beautiful museum.
It is, and so we definitely need a trip there, hint, hint, whatever the reason is, but we need to go there for some reason, don't we?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, competition time again.
I think it is. So we have another question for you. Are you getting the idea of this so far? Do you need to repeat the rules? Go on one last time.
Well, I'm hoping that so just remember there, as soon as David answers the question, the competition will be open. Drop your answers into chat, whether it's the World of Tanks chat, whether it's the Tank Museum chat, YouTube, or Twitch for us on the World of Tanks. And you'll have the time it takes us to get to the vehicle, and then David will give the answer, and the competition obviously stops there. Just to reiterate, we will do our best to get everything to you, the physical side of things, obviously before Christmas, but it can't be guaranteed depending, of course, where you live. But we'll get you there as soon as possible. And for the in-game stuff, again, just to make sure you're aware, it's only valid for the EU servers, only valid on the EU server.
So what are they going to win this one?
So this time, yes, we have another one of our fantastic German Tiger ones. Unfortunately, somebody won the last one, David. So this is the last one, actually.
Don't get this one right then. Right.
And also for the players, we've also got another Type 59, so another Type 59 to put in your garage.
So the question is, for this time, who is recognised, who is known as the key designer of the T-34 tank? So who is the designer of the T-34 tank? So that's the question for this time, and you won't have too long to answer it because we're going to go for a walk in a second. We're just going to go and have a look at our T-34. So get going on that one. Should we go for
Let's go.
Right, we're heading out again. So here we go again on yet another wander through the museum. I'll slow down again so we don't go and bump into something or do something we shouldn't do. So we're heading in a slightly different direction this way. We're going to be heading, as we go through here, we try and take people through when you're doing this new World War II display. Bit of a chronological way of going all around it. But what we've picked on to redo our Second World War Hall, we tell the British armoured soldiers' story, some of the Commonwealth, but obviously those of you, if you're interested in the subject, you play the games, you do everything else, you'll realise one of the key elements of tank warfare in World War II, the vast majority of tank fighting actually went on the Eastern Front. And we, again, for our new displays, we had to reflect that somewhere, even though we're really majoring on the British tank soldiers' story in World War II. So we are going to be putting a T-34 85, which of course the British soldiers and American soldiers actually ended up meeting up with when they got to the Elbe. But it's there to really represent that other massive side of the World War II tank story, the Eastern Front. So you've ever driven a Russian tank?
I have actually driven the T-34 if you wander across to it, and twice now I've driven the T-34, and I have to say, it's not an easy vehicle to drive by any stretch of the imagination. The gearbox on the T-34 is notorious anyway, and you have to be physically strong, and it's physically hard work to drive this machine.
I've seen our driver, he's actually put his foot up against the glacis plate, you know, as they're actually doing this sort of thing. But when you look at a T-34 85, one of the things you're looking at here, I always like making that point that when it's actually originally designed, just before the Second World War, its build quality is actually really good. It's only because the Russians in the summer of 1941, they have to move their factories out the way of the advancing German army. And when they do that, they have issues with spare part, time, all sorts of quality issues that they have to try and work around, and they start realizing that for a tank, some of the processes, some of the fixtures, some of the things that were on that tank aren't necessary if it's about to go into combat for a relatively short period of time. So they started dispensing with things. Why bother finishing it to the nth degree when a crude finish is good enough, you know, if it actually works? And this tank is actually made after World War II, but it still looks very crude with these cast lines on it, things on there that you can't help but feel a Western tank manufacturer would smooth off all those surfaces. Certainly Germans would never let that leave the factory that way. But really the Russians ended up looking like a tank, just like we would a hand grenade, I think. The idea is anything on that hand grenade that's superfluous, just don't bother doing it, don't use it, sort of thing. And that idea of the simplicity, mass production, that works for the Russians, you know, and this is still a great tank, and amazingly we've just seen photographs still being used out in the Yemen. So, you know, in combat to this day, all those years later.
And when it comes to the collectors, I mean, there are so many collectors that own the T-34. Well, I just think it's really, I mean, because they are, you know, mechanically, they're a sound tank. They're, you know, they're not exactly hard to work on as well. They're, a lot of the collectors I speak to actually quite enjoy working on the T-34 because everything is, it always reminds me of, you know, our first cars, where you could actually do things yourself, where you could fix it. It wasn't too mechanical, it wasn't too complicated, and just, you know, a great all-round vehicle.
Yeah, and we've got, we're working on our one at the moment, and again, that idea that so many of them were made, and it was interesting to see a few years ago, you know, a whole load going back to Moscow so they can use in parades and that sort of thing, because of course, and we mentioned again on our tank chat, this is a vehicle that really, like for the British, like a World War II, the Spitfire embodies a certain period. For the Russians, the T-34, that's like the soul of the country, this idea of being able to, well, the great, as they call it, the great patriotic war, being able to overcome fascism, and this almost symbolises it. And of course, you know, goes on for service in so many different countries, many variations depending on what factory it comes from. But the key one, so going back to the key issue that we asked you a little bit earlier on, so who is recognised as a designer of the T-34? And the answer to that is Mikhail Koshkin. So if you've got Koshkin down as your answer, well done, you've got that one right. And Koshkin, famously, he actually is trying to prove to the Red Army that the T-34 tank is worth them investing in. It's a really good one. They go on a drive, actually a lengthy road march in snowy weather. Koshkin catches pneumonia and he actually dies in 1940 before this tank. He doesn't know about its history afterwards, in the sense he dies before it actually goes into action. So Mikhail Koshkin, if you've got that one right, well done. That's the answer to that latest part of our competition.
And that's that particular part of the competition over with then. So without further ado, we're going to go back to the vintage vixens.
Mr. Santa, bring me a G, make him the cutest that I've ever seen. Give him two lips like roses and clover, and tell him that his lonesome nights are over. Santa, I'm so alone, don't have nobody to call my own. Please turn on your magic beam, Mr. Santa, bring me a dream. Bum 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 bum. Mr. Santa, bring me a dream, make him the cutest that I've ever seen. Give him the word that I'm not a rover, and tell him that his lonesome nights are over. Santa, I'm so alone, don't have nobody to call my own. Please turn on your magic beam, Mr. Santa, bring me a dream. Bum 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 bum. Bring me a G, give him a pair of eyes with a come hither gleam. Give him a lonely heart like Pagliacci, and lots of wavy hair like Liberace. Mr. Santa, someone to hold, would be so peachy before we're too old. So please turn on your magic beam, Mr. Santa, bring me a dream.
And on the line belonging to Siegfried, Grandpa's carpet takes up a forward position. Dr. Slati Bartfart commands the well-known and beloved EOC 90. And with a tank such as this, the field is a no-brainer. The superior view range reveals all the wannabe snipers, whilst the tiny profile keeps our hero hidden from watchful eyes. Even in close quarters, how do you hit something barely higher than a pile of rocks? However, with just about half the game gone, Dr. Slati Bartfart suddenly runs out of allies, while facing 5 enemy tanks and cap pressure. First things first, the annoying Kappa. Conveniently, this little maneuver makes all the Reds flock to the scene of the crime, only for our hero to pick them off. Using mobility and stealth, Dr. Slati Bartfart is splitting them up and striking them down one by one. Ingenious. Wait, not yet. Now! The little EOC is on the move once again. This guerrilla tactic is working beautifully. Aha! With the KV pushing south, it creates a perfect opportunity to ambush the Tiger. 2 shots as an appetizer, before a 3-shot entree. However, the dessert will need to hurry, as the siren signals closing time. Rushing over an open field? How about a no? Softening the prey? Don't mind if I do. But with no time to lose, it's now or never. Yeah, never stood a chance. GG. What a game by Dr. Slati Bartfart, perfectly demonstrating the principle of defeat in detail. Isolate and assassinate, or maybe divide and conquer. Dealing 5,000 damage, 8 kills and 1,729 base experience might not be a Best Replays of the Week record, but we couldn't pass up on such a well-played game. A worthy contender for our Best Replay of the Week.
Here we are again. Okay, so what we've got for you now is a really interesting video from the French Tank Museum, which you've been there, I've been there. It's a fantastic place on the Loire Valley.
It is beautiful, isn't it? I mean, the area itself is just, it's the home of the French cavalry, I do believe. So, of course, my wife absolutely loves it, horses and everything like that. But it is a stunning museum. I mean, their collection is vast.
Yeah, it is an amazingly big collection, stunning collection there. And we've got now a new face for us actually here, which is to introduce the collection to you, who is their new curator. So, over to the French Tank Museum in Saumur.
Welcome to the French Tank Museum. We are at Saumur, on the banks of the river Loire. This museum is one of the French Army's biggest. 11,000 square meters, 200 vehicles in exhibition. And in our collection, several dozen of historic vehicles are still in running condition. All of them are witnesses to more than 100 years of history. The First World War, including the last surviving examples of the first French tanks. The Second World War, from start to finish of the conflict, with examples of both Axis and Allied war machine. The Cold War and contemporary conflicts, with tanks from the Warsaw Pact, NATO and other countries. An armored vehicle from 17 countries, including many exceptional examples. A large number of these historic vehicles are regularly used, thanks to the work of our mechanics, as part of dynamic displays during national and international events. For example, every year in July, the Carousel de Saumur showcases 40 historic vehicles in motion. Our friends at the Bovington Tank Museum asked us if you could ask for a tank from Father Christmas, even one that no longer exists, what would you choose? Okay, so let's ask for the biggest French tank in all history, the FCM2C. Weighing 70 tons, 10 meters long, 3.8 meters high, and with a team of 12 to operate it. It was developed during the First World War to break through the strongest German defenses. This giant would have taken part in huge offensives in 1919, but the war ended before the steel monsters could enter series production. Only 10 examples were manufactured and delivered by 1921. They served primarily as trios vehicles and for propaganda. At the time, the FCM2C was very up-to-date. The tank was powered by 2 petrol engines powering 2 electric motors, one for each track, 100 years ahead of today's hybrid cars. In the turret, the vehicle commander enjoyed an exceptional field of view thanks to a panoramic viewing dome. This photo shows the 2 parts. A fixed dome with large viewing ports, topped by a mobile section with many vertical viewing slits. The top section rotated at 300 rotations per minute. At this high speed, an interesting phenomenon occurs for the observer, the stroboscopic effect. To explain, at this speed, the human eye cannot perceive the armor between the viewing slits. The observer thus has unobstructed 360-degree vision. But these behemoths were very slow, 12 kilometers per hour, and very thirsty for fuel. Long journeys had to be undertaken by train, but there were no railway wagons big enough. The tank itself had to form part of a railway wagon. The tank was placed on the rails, then lifted using jacks. It was then fixed to the bogies, one at the front, one at the back. These 2 bogies are all that remain today of the FCM2C, and they form part of the Saumur Museum collection. The FCM2C was still in service with the French army at the beginning of the Second World War, but the German advance was too quick and the FCM2C tanks were stopped during their movement to the front and destroyed by their crews. All of them were blown up except one because the explosive failed to function. Captured by the Germans, it was taken to Germany as a war trophy. All trace of it was lost during the war. Our shop is open, and a selection of products is available on our website. For more information, please contact us. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and on our website. We hope to see you soon, and until then, we wish you a Merry Christmas.
So that was Saumur, and boy, what a choice to have a Char 2C, 18-man crew. You know, what a vehicle to. That's not a bad choice for something that's missing. Sadly, they were all blown up in 1940 because to stop them falling into German hands. So
and their AMX collection there, David, have you seen that? Unbelievable.
Yeah, quite some stuff. So again, another one of those museums, and do please try and support all those museums. He's mentioned his shop there. Please, all those other museums we've been showing, so important that you do try and keep those museums going, because we want to be able to see those collections into the future too. Now, we've got another bit of the hidden museum that Richard saw earlier in the week. We have a fantastic reserve collection of vehicles in our store, what we call the Vehicle Conservation Centre. So Richard was over there with Chris van Schadenberg, our head of collections, earlier this week to have a look around. So we've got a video to show you now.
So here we are now in the Vehicle Conservation Centre, the VCC. Absolutely fantastic. Chris, thank you so much for inviting me in. I love this building. I have to say it's my favourite building out of the entire museum.
Same here, a bit of everything in here. Some of the running vehicles, some of the stored vehicles, future projects. It's just a sheer variety. Over 100 vehicles in here. And engines, gearboxes, you name it. It's a sort of tank.
And this is just sort of, is this like the overflow or something? Or is this just where you put your
Yeah, that's right, Richard. It's a bit of everything. We have got future exhibition items. So if we want to do a new exhibition on a particular project, we can bring them out here and get the ones that are currently on display in here. So it's that overflow we can work with. And at the front, some of the vehicles that we run, about 20-ish vehicles that are currently in running condition, dotted near the doors. Ideally, they have their own garage in the future. It's something we hope to work towards, because at the moment we're mixing storage and the running vehicles, not ideal. But at the same time, they need to be here because we're running out of space, and they need to be in a good environment as well, because some of the more modern vehicles, they actually suffer quite badly from the damp conditions in some of the other buildings. So
I say it wasn't so long ago, before obviously the VCC was here, a lot of the vehicles were outside, weren't they, rusting away?
Absolutely.
And
as Richard, director, always says, unless they're in the cover, there's not much else you can do with them to look after them. So the good thing is everything is undercover, and this is really, really good environment. Big building. Yeah, heating in there, big slab, a concrete slab on the floor, so that helps as well in the summer to keep it cool and in the winter to keep it warm. That heat exchanger, and yeah, some spares.
I was just say, you keep plenty of space there. There's a massive, I don't know if the viewers can see it, massive track against that wall there. Plenty of power packs, gearboxes as well, I assume, down there.
Yeah, these we received from Shrivenham, the Defence College of Shrivenham. Some really, throughout from the Second World War to more recent material, engines, gearboxes, they were used for teaching purposes and training purposes, and they gave them to us. They still need to be sorted out, but fantastic material, Valentine suspension, multi-bank, cutaway multi-bank for a Sherman, a bit of everything. Again, that's the nice thing about this, being it complete units, vehicles, order parts, a bit of everything. So yeah, this ideal toy store here.
I'm going to put you on the spot here now, Chris. How many vehicles in here at the moment?
Yes, just over 100.
Over 100, that's good. Have you got any particular favourites?
I think just like everyone else, you have sort of favourites in different periods. Yeah, the Leopard's always impressive. I like the Chieftain. It's just a bit of everything. You have favourites in each different period. I'm a Centurion man, I must admit, but yeah.
Might be a Berlin camo on the Chieftain there.
I know, it's the wrong mark for it, but it looks good. It's nice to see something not green. But yeah, this must mean obviously a lot to you, this vehicle, that you served on for many years.
Not many years, I hasten to add, Chris. I'm not quite that old. I started on Chieftain,
but it was
fairly
started
quickly.
on Centurion, but you didn't, did you?
No, I didn't. No.
But that's the nice thing as well, talking to people that actually served on these vehicles, because it's great having the vehicles, but unless you speak to the crews, those maintained them and those worked on them, and those who served on them, it just gives it that edge, that interesting story. It makes it sort of three-dimensional from a story point of view.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what we're all about in the museum.
And I'm right in saying that not every single vehicle in here actually belongs to the museum. You've got a few private collectors.
That's right. This one, let's point out the Hago, really rare beast, Japanese tank, Second World War. We have one in the collection, of course, on display. This is privately owned by a gentleman, a collector in Japan. It came to the museum last year as a loan. We operated in TANKFest 2019. We were planning to use it this year, because this year completely changed. He kindly let us have us for another year. So next year will be the last year to have the Hago on display. And yeah, really grateful. And not just the Hago, we've got other vehicles, the Stug. We've working with the Churchill Trust to have some Churchills here. So because we are the tank museum and people know what we do, and we have the facilities to look after it and especially to display it in the arena, because not everyone, of course, has an arena, even though they may have a collection of vehicles. We're working, and we're looking forward to working with other private collectors and other trusts and museums to highlight their collections and give the variety for our shows. Because we have the volume, but people want to see different things every now and then. So do we. So it's, yeah.
And of course, I do know that some of the, obviously, the keener, the people doing research and that, love the VCC as well, because you've got some super rare vehicles. I mean, we can't actually see them from here, but tucked away across in the corner, I know there's a Conway, for example. And
yes, yeah, and that's the nice thing. And we do provide access when people have a research inquiry. We let them in here, and on special open days or special tours, we'll let people through here, because again, there's no point having all this if no one can actually see it. And it forces us well to look after it, that it's clean, when it's safe to go through. But it's always quite a pleasure to see people going through here and appreciate for what they are. And as you said, some people are very interested in a particular vehicle or a family of vehicles, while others just love the sheer variety and the volume and the smells of it. When they come in, you see people normally go, wow. And the smell, for those that serve on tanks, they go directly, this smells like tank.
It does remind me of the tank park. Now, Chris, a question for me. I mean, there's some of the stuff tucked away further back here. how on earth, if you ever want to get to it, do you have to drag everything else out? I assume you do.
Yes.
That was an easy answer then.
First in, last out, yeah. So if we would need access to some of the prototype vehicles in the back, you would get this entire row out, and then you bring them through the doors and you pull them out. It's a lot of work. We're actually having some light work coming up. We have to replace lights in the VCC, so we need to pull quite a few rows out just to gain access to service those. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Chris. To say it is the best place. People can visit it. They can come in here as well, can't they, during the day? And,
yeah, the balcony is open normally on normal days, and then on special events like Tiger Day and Tank Fest, we open the floor up for people to wander around, and we do also provide specialist tours for groups.
Awesome. Super. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you.
And we're joined by Chris now. So Chris, Head of Collections. How are you, Chris? Firstly, thank you so much for showing me around the Vehicle Conservation Centre. It was fantastic, always interesting down there. So it was really kind to take your time out to do it.
Yeah, pleasure. It's good to see you again, Richard.
So, Head of Collections, what does the job involve, Chris?
I look after the exhibitions team, the archive team, and the workshop, and work closely with them just every day, which is quite enjoyable.
What's the most enjoyable part of your job, do you think?
It's actually a variety. It's a little bit of everything. I think it was featured earlier on, the exhibitions work we're just doing for phase 2, which is really happening at the moment. And we're looking forward to that, starting the build work early January. So seeing later on the satisfaction of the visitors, what it's like, the new exhibition that we've worked on for many months. With the archive, you just saw Stuart showing some of the gems we have in our stores, and it's always looking what's coming in and looking after that and using that for the exhibitions. I looked with Stuart earlier at some plants that were donated to us. There's always something exciting coming in, something unique. And with the workshop, I guess most visitors would have seen more of it because of the Tank Workshop Diaries. The project, working with the guys, with Matt Hibbs, the workshop manager, and Jonathan, the project manager, on all the different projects we have on the go, preparing them for events. So there's always something going on. Today was a combination of meeting the army for Tank Fest next year, selecting some items for a display case for phase 2 of the exhibition, and installing a dehumidifier with Stuart in the archive. So never a dull moment.
So I'd imagine, obviously, the big event of the year for the Tank Museum is Tank Fest, of course. Now, I'd imagine your job becomes absolutely crazy at that particular time of year.
I think for all of us it becomes a bit crazy. It's one of those things you look forward to, but you're also pleased when it's safely over. You can sort of tick everything off at the end of the day that both all the tanks are good and most importantly that everyone survived, really. So, but yeah, it's for the entire museum, from the media team to the events team. Everyone involved has an input in that, and it's fantastic to work together on it.
How hard is it? Because obviously for me, one of the really important factors, and it's sort of, as Tank Fest has progressed through the years, it's sort of that, you know, you sort of almost cut your own throat where you try to obviously make the next event bigger and better than the last one, but not just in terms of the sheer scale, but it's also, I think for me, the guest vehicles you get. Which makes it unusual, makes it not like the previous Tank Fest. So I'd imagine that part of it for you must be an absolute nightmare, trying to sort of like figure out with everybody else in the team what it is we'd really like to see at Tank Fest for the year.
That's always the question we have. We discussed it in the group. Is it more? You cannot just more and more and more. It's the variety, and that's why we're starting to work more and more with some of our guests and supporters that you have seen throughout this Christmas special. They've all been very kind to us, loaning vehicles, but it's not just the other museums, private collectors, and other museums within the UK, but also for us occasionally drag something new out that we haven't run for a while, or recent project that the guys have worked on, like last year the Churchill. So it's ended before that, the long-term project, the Matilda 2. So it's working with our collection here, with the team to decide what do we want, especially for next year, a really new setup, which is exciting, and new challenges, but also exciting. And yeah, we can't do this without our partners, and it's exciting. It's good for us because you see new vehicles that we don't have necessarily in running condition.
So we've asked everybody else, Chris, you will be, no exception, Tank for Christmas.
I think there's so many vehicles have been listed, the Abrams, the Merkava. I would like to have a Vickers export from the 60s, 70s. It really belongs in our collection. They're out there, and I think we should send David on a mission to get them. Ideally, some sort of an area, maybe a civil war going on, we can send David in there, sort something out, and get us a tank.
So I think it's very apt. We've actually got coming up, now for those of you who aren't aware, Chris, you may giveaway maybe in the name is Dutch, so it may be a good idea perhaps, Chris, if you could introduce the next museum for us.
Yeah, the next museum is our partner in Alfred Starman at the National Military Museum in the Netherlands. They've been good partners of ours.
And over to them.
Welcome at the National Military Museum of the Netherlands, located at the former Soesterberg Air Base. You might know us from our last appearance when we showed you our arsenal with a wide variety of tanks and vehicles. Thank you, Bovington, for inviting us to your Christmas party. You asked us, what tank do you want for Christmas? Well, I know what I want. I want your Target 2. Nah, just joking. But your Target 2 is still here on loan until September next year. Actually, we got an early Christmas present this year, which we'd like to show you. Follow me outside. This is what the Dutch call IPR 765 armored personnel carrier. For many years it was the standard tracked infantry fighting vehicle for the Dutch army. The standard configuration has a 25mm cannon and a coax machine gun. When the Dutch went to Afghanistan, the vehicles were already 30 years old. The province of Uruzgan force protection was of the utmost importance. After many lethal accidents with roadside bombs and rocket-propelled grenades, extra protection was added to the vehicle. The armor is covered with an extra layer of small devices which explode when hit by a rocket-propelled grenade. This prevents the piercing of the armor and of the hull. A very effective solution, but there was only one problem. By putting on the extra armor, the vehicles gained a lot of extra weight. They went from 30 tons to 21. They solved that problem by revitalizing the engines and strengthening the suspension. The Dutch used 30 of these vehicles in Afghanistan, from approximately 2009 until 2011. After that, they were sold to Jordania. And this is the only one left, and we consider it a very important addition to our collection. We hope to have it on display sometime soon. Or even better, come and see it perform in our tank arena during our annual tank show in August next year. For more information about the National Military Museum, please visit our website nmm.nl or follow us on Facebook, Instagram or YouTube. Thanks again, Bovington, and we wish you all very happy holidays.
And that's another one of those museums at Soesterberg in the Netherlands. If you've not been, really, I would strongly recommend make the effort to go, because it's a stunning modern collection, really great collection in there as well. And people like Alfred, wonderful guy. It's a beautiful new setting as well for their collections overall. So again, please do support all these museums. We keep saying it. They're only going to keep going if people like yourselves support them or go along to them. Now, it's time we have another one of our competitions. I believe.
It is, David, and this competition is a biggie.
Always
to be
a big one.
honest, it's a biggie. We've got two really nice prizes here. So the first prize we have, dun dun dun, we had an Asus gaming laptop. Really, really nice laptop there. So again, if you feel the need that you don't want to enter, I'm sure that my son would appreciate a new laptop. So there you go, Asus gaming laptop. And also from the World of Tanks side, we've also giving away all of the World of Tanks Advent calendar tanks. So obviously for this prize, they're not actually finished yet, so they will be credited to your account after Christmas, of course. But so all of the Advent calendar tanks and a fantastic laptop.
So for late arrivals, how do you enter the competition?
There you go. Final time we're going to do this. So to enter the competition, once David gives you, the clock starts ticking once David gives you the question, and all you need to do is enter the answer into either the World of Tanks YouTube channel, the Tank Museum YouTube channel, or indeed onto the World of Tanks Twitch channel.
So the question for you, the last one to win, or two of you will win these wonderful items. The question is, what is the name of that ripply-looking coating that the Germans put on their tanks for a certain period, not the whole war, for a certain period in the war? What is the name of that special coating that Germans put on their tanks that has either a waffle or a ripply effect on it? What's that called? That's going to be the question for you. Now, we are going for yet another wander through the museum, and we're going to end up with one of the vehicles that actually has that coating on the vehicle. So, are we ready to go?
Is that another question? Which
No. That's just an order, really, sort of thing. Let's head off in this direction again, and we're going to head out there and say hello to our cameramen again, and try and find our way through. And again, I have to be honest, because since we've put all the new display in, even for staff members, you know, like you've always got shortcuts to get to places. I still find myself going around the back of something and finding like, oh, it's not quite where I thought it was going to be.
But do you know, David, I have to say that I think that one of the biggest joys about the Tank Museum is the fact that you are constantly changing the displays. And I think that is so important, because every time I come down here, which, to be fair, is quite on a regular basis, there's always something fresh to look at. There's always something which catches my eye.
So for us, that part of that idea is the idea of making people want to come back instead of once every 5 years. Why I've got to come back every year to see what's new. And one of the other big issues that we've again I've always found fascinating is sometimes people say, wow, that's a great new vehicle, where did you get that from? I never knew you had that sort of thing, or is it brand new to the collection? And again, for us, often one of the things that we're a big collection, so not everyone finds their way to every corner. And of course, we've seen it already. We're repainting some of the vehicles, re-representing them in a different part of the story. So that's another one of those reasons why people sometimes are saying, wow, look at this, it's something new. No, it's not. You just didn't even find your way there. Or the way we're displaying it in this context is new. So there's a lot of vehicles here. We do have, the great thing is, there we are talking about wants list. That's a new Sherman that came. It was a gate guard. It's been on our books for a while, but it's the first time it's actually been here at the museum. So there are vehicles that are genuinely new for people to come and see, but also it's how what the context, putting them in a new diorama or something. That's the other thing from that side of it. But and again, this lineup here. I mean, we didn't talk about it before, but what we're trying to represent here, this will be finished off over this winter. But it's basically, we're trying to represent the Great Swan, that fantastic British breakout. So that's why we've got these ones going down in this way. And if we come around, we're coming around the corner here, and this is where we put a couple of vehicles in a bit of a diorama. If you're in museums, there's much debate. Should you be doing dioramas in the way, we've got a big trench display and everything. We know from our visitor surveys the public still absolutely love looking at things in a bit of a context. So for me, there's no question about it. You still see people in the trench, going like this, as if, was this what it was like? And the photo opportunity, if you're a model maker, you made the dioramas when you were younger and everything. So just doing it on a one-to-one scale, that's part and parcel.
Well, I mean, it's fantastic. When you've got, I'm sure the camera can see it there, iconic Tiger II, and sort of going down into the German sat there and the diorama behind it. It does look really, really effective. Coupled with the lighting and everything, really, really good.
Yeah, and there's even a soundscape. We've turned everything off at the moment. You can probably just hear the heater on in the background, unfortunately, but there's a soundscape as well. So all of those other ways, because people come to museums for very different reasons. Some of us, if you're an enthusiast, you want to take your photographs. Sometimes it's about education, but you've got to entertain people. And I know a lot of the people will be watching this will probably be, there'll be the die-hard, either the gamers, the modelers, people that really love the subject. But the vast majority of our audience that actually comes in here are families on holiday in Dorset in the summer. So you've got to make your exhibitions appeal to that whole range of the family. And what's always nice is reading things like the TripAdvisor reviews, where actually it was Dad's choice. Mum came along with him to keep him pleased for the day, but then you hear them or you see what they've written. End of the day, I didn't think I'd enjoy that, but actually I really, really like, and that actually, because there's something I would argue here for pretty much everybody, so we can get that one across. So you know what this beast is, of course? This is our, go on, this is my competition bit with you. This is our
Tiger II.
This is our King Tiger. So again, we're really lucky here. One of those big beasts. We're lucky we have two King Tigers. Our pre-production one is actually on loan to the Netherlands. You saw that in the film there earlier. This one was actually captured in Normandy. It was part of an SS unit. But we talked earlier a little bit about tank crews. One of the other things about why tank crews train all the time to get the best from the vehicle, almost certainly the young driver of this vehicle hadn't had enough training time, didn't know how to manoeuvre a vehicle of this complexity, and he made a mess of the final drive. So yet another one of those points we were making earlier. However good the tank, if the crew can't use it effectively, you're done for. And that's what happened. This ended up going into a relatively soft ground, made a mess of the final drive, the crew abandoned it. There's stories of French resistance firing on the crew. British tanks come around the corner, they fired at it. There's some damage on the side where the British fired at it. Already, it was an empty vehicle. So already we know, that it had been abandoned by the Germans. They were already marching back to Germany. There's a tank captured. It went to a teaching establishment in Shrivenham before coming down here to the Tank Museum. So we're really pleased to have it. And it's part of our question, of course, because I asked, what's that finish that the Germans put on their tanks? It's an anti-magnetic coating, so you can't stick anything magnetic on it. It makes a barrier between the metal underneath, and that is called Zimmerit. And it was what the Germans put on their tanks, so Zimmerit is the answer to that question. So, you knew that, didn't you, all the way along?
Absolutely. It's I actually just completed reading a book all about Zimmerit and the way it's actually made and everything.
Yeah, we actually tried it.
I saw that. It was a fascinating process, and yes, many people are certainly interested in Zimmerit. So that's it. Answer to your question there. For the next one, slightly unusual now, David. We're actually going to show you a video now from the French Foreign Legion, believe it or not. Now, this may seem a bit out of context in what we've done so far, but we were recently approached by the French Foreign Legion about 3 or 4 weeks ago. That's World of Tanks, and I guess, like you said, we were having a conversation earlier, not many people are actually aware that they have got an armoured regiment in the French Foreign Legion. Incredibly nice bunch. We went out there, we spent the day with them, and we'll certainly be doing something in the future just for the community's benefit to see what
they're big World of Tanks fans, I gather.
They were into World of Tanks, they enjoyed playing the game and everything, and they just thought it would be a nice fit for them to come across. So, and why not? We've always worked the RTR as a prime example in the past, so why not take the French Foreign Legion on board? So fascinating. We hope you enjoy the video. I just want to say to them in particular, big thank you for taking the time out to do this. They are actually on operations and very busy at the moment, so they took some special time out to make this little video for you to enjoy. So we really, really hope you enjoy it. So it's over to the French Foreign Legion.
Hello. I'm Colonel Nicolas Meunier. I'm the commanding officer of the French Foreign Legion Armoured Cavalry Regiment. As you may know, the 1st French Foreign Legion Armoured WWII Regiment is about to celebrate its 100th Christmas in 2021.
In the French Foreign Legion, Christmas has always been the most important celebration. And this is why we are so proud to share our passion for combat with the World of Tanks community during this Christmas Tanks event. Christmas is also about sharing, and this is the main goal we are trying to achieve with this upcoming centenary year celebration. So please, have a look on our website and join the regiment's community to help and support the French Foreign Legion veterans. Now, we will show you our main armoured vehicle, the AMX-10 RC. I hope you will enjoy its features as much as we did earlier this year when we were deployed in Mali. Thank you very much.
Hi gamers, I'm Staff Sergeant Jacobus, coming to you from Carpian, one of the most beautiful army bases in the world and home to the 1st Foreign Cavalry Regiment where I'm currently serving. Today I'm going to present to you the AMX-10 RC, an armoured reconnaissance vehicle affectionately known as Le 10 by its crew and truly the workhorse of our regiment. This amazing vehicle has a crew of 4, the driver, the loader, the gunner inside the turret and of course the tank commander. The AMX-10 RCR is powered by a diesel engine and its 6x6 wheel configuration is fitted with a hydraulic suspension system which allows for variable ground clearance and tilt. These features give it excellent mobility on all types of terrain. The main armament of the AMX-10 RCR is a 105mm main gun which can fire high explosive and smoke shells at over 1800 meters and armor-piercing sabot shells at almost 2000 meters. In full combat order, it is equipped with 38 shells, and when firing, the thunder of the shot and the flash of the flame give the crew an experience of the awesome firepower of this weapon. Add to that the smell of gunpowder, and you have an experience that you will never forget. It is also equipped with a 762 coaxial machine gun and a second 762 machine gun on a swivel mount on the turret. This gives it some awesome firepower. Some added extra features include a thermal imaging camera for the gunner, and a digital battle space computer which helps the tank commander visualize all the elements of the battlefield as a whole. The AMX-10RC is also equipped with an NBC protection system which allows it to execute all its missions in a contaminated environment. Le 10 has taken part in all of the major conflicts of the French army over the last years, ranging from Kosovo, the First Gulf War, Afghanistan and Africa, where it is still currently being used by the French cavalry units today.
So we're all saying here, what an amazing vehicle, that AMX-10. You know, being able to do a neutral turn like that is quite something for a wheeled vehicle. You know, you don't often see that often. So interesting bunch sort of stuff.
Fascinating, really. I mean, it's a really nice day down there, and hopefully in the future we're going to bring you a lot more from the French Royal Legion. You know.
And get that vehicle to TANKMAS for us. That'll be the next
no
one.
comment.
So, okay. Now, we're very lucky because there's a group of tank museums. There's a kind of like new member in many ways, because the Jordanians, the King of Jordan, has been a great tank fan for many years, and he's been putting together a collection which is now open in Amman, and you've actually been out there.
Yeah, we've travelled out there a couple of times now, and beautiful collection, beautiful building, and I have to say, I mean, if you want to sort of like visit a museum and a bit of a holiday at the same time, obviously Jordan is stunning with Petra and everything else. It's a beautiful, beautiful place to visit, but yeah.
We actually were helping them put together the collection. I mean, I went out there about 15 years ago, you know, and I remember seeing the different bits scattered around the place, and it's really interesting because I haven't seen the completed museum, but seeing some of those vehicles on this video, where I remember them standing outside army bases with flat tyres and everything, you know, that sort of thing, and now seeing them how they're presented. So another one, if you've got the chance, you happen to go to Jordan or you want a trip to the Middle East, this is a stunning collection, very much worth a visit. And here's a film that shows you some of the amazing things they've actually got there in the Royal Collection in Jordan.
Good day, everyone. My name is Maher Tarawni, the Director General of the Royal Tank Museum, the home of military heritage. I would like to begin by wishing you all a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Our museum is a Jordanian national museum with international standards, located in Amman, Jordan, and it is considered one of its kind in the region. Our mission is to collect, restore, and exhibit tanks and AFVs in order to educate the public on the role these tanks played in military conflicts in our region and across the globe. Our collection is massive. We exhibit more than 140 tanks and AFVs in 15 galleries, displayed in chronological order, starting from World War I to our recent days. Our policy is to keep updating our collection with unique tanks. Latest additions to our collection include the Panzer IB tank that was recently restored by our team at the museum, and the Soviet T-60 tank. We also have the Japanese Type 61 tank, and we will be soon welcoming one of the oldest Soviet tanks to be displayed in World War II Hall. I invite all of you to come and visit our museum, and once again, Merry Christmas and stay safe.
Good day, chaps. My name is Tammam Khassauni. I'm the Operations Manager of the Royal Tank Museum. I wish you're staying safe during this pandemic. We're now standing in the gallery of the Jordan Armed Forces. This gallery is, for me, one of the best galleries that we have in our museum. We display here a collection of tanks that served in the Jordanian Armed Forces, and we tell the story of the development that took place in the armored divisions in our army. We start the story with the Valentine Archer and the Charioteer, which were entered the service during the 50s and 60s of the last century. We tell the story of the Jordanian patriots who defended our country. In addition to the Valentine Archer and the Charioteer, you can see behind me the Sherman, which served during the 50s in our army. Also, we have some armored vehicles and scout cars displayed, and you can walk through them during your visit. Also, in this gallery, visitors can have the chance to climb on one of the tanks and have the opportunity to take photos to remember their visit to the museum. Every new year, we all have wishes. And we at the Royal Tank Museum also have our own wish. Our wish is to expand our collection, and on top of that, we wish to add the King Tiger to our collection to be displayed in the World War II gallery. Finally, I wish you a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. and please be safe. Thank you so much.
Good day, everyone. I hope you are all safe and well in this challenging time. I'm Sarah Nsirat. I'm the business developer at the Royal Tank Museum. First off, I would like to thank our colleagues in the Tank Museum in Bovington and Wargaming Europe for their help and support. I would like also to invite you all to visit our website to find out more information about us, to follow up with our recent news and activities, including our live tank shows, and also to enjoy a unique experience of having a virtual tour within the museum. Connect with us on social media platforms shown on the screen to have the chance to enter the gates of history and learn more about the main historical events that took place regionally and internationally. The Royal Tank Museum is working on its gift shop that will offer a massive and unique collection of items worth to be collected for a lifetime. Also, the museum offers a creative edutainment space for activities for its visitors for free. If you have any questions or if you would like additional information about the museum, send us an email. Stay safe and visit the museum during your next trip to Jordan. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas.
So you can see there, as I was saying, what an amazing collection is actually now being put together in Amman. Now, we've come, I'm afraid to say, to the end of our evening broadcast.
It's almost the end, David. Time for a pint, I think.
A little bit more than that. And also a big thank you. Thank you so much. Obviously, lots of people to thank. Thank all those wonderful museums that have submitted their videos. If you want to find out more about them or go to the links on their shop, have a look at our tankmuseum.org/TANKMAS. There's all the links are on there. At the very end of this particular broadcast as well, we'll be putting up all the names of the competition winners, so you'll be able to see who got what in our various competitions there. And of course, our thank you to all of you who have already been supporting, not just us, the Tank Museum, but thank you to World of Tanks for that, their support for the Tank Museum as well. Things you've been buying, and don't forget, keep looking out on our shop, because TOG, that lovely Kobe model, that'll be coming out next year. So if you have got some money, some gift vouchers, whatever it is over Christmas, start saving it, because you can be buying that in the new year.
And I just want to say a couple of thank you. I mean, obviously, at first, a massive thank you to yourself, David, and obviously all the team, Richard Smith and everybody else who's made it all happen down here. Obviously, it's a learning experience when you're doing things like this for live streams and everything. So thank you for the time and effort. And most of all, thank you to everybody that's watched and joins us this evening, to all our fantastic community for all your support over this very taxing year. It has been a hell of a year. Fingers crossed all of you are staying safe, and we look forward to, again, hopefully, Tankfest next year. Most of all, I just want you to all have a fantastic Christmas and a very peaceful New Year. And to take us out, once again, we're going to go the final time to the brilliant Vintage Vixens.
Happy Christmas.
Christmas, everybody. Thank you so much for having us this night and joining us. We're going to see you out with a bit of Boogie Woogie Boogie Boy. Are you ready, girls? Here we go. Woo-hoo.
He was a famous jumping man from the Chicago way. He had a boogie star but no one else could play. He was a top man at his craft. And then his number came up and he was gone with the draft. He's in the army now, I'm lying reveille. He's a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. He made it go a bugle for his Uncle Sam. He really brought him down because he could not jam. And Captain seemed to understand, because the next day the cap got out of jet in a band. And now the company jumps when he plays reveille. He's a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. A toot, a toot, a tooty-yaddy toot. He goes his way to the bar. The boogie rhythm, he can't blow a note unless the basic guitar is playing with him. He makes the company jump when he plays reveille. He's a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B.
He was a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B.
Oh, yes, he was.
And when he plays boogie woogie bugle, he was busy as a boogie bee. He makes a play, coming down to the bar. He's a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. Toot-toot-toot-toot-lada, toot-lada, toot-toot. He blows it into the bar. He can't blow a note unless the bass and guitar is in rhythm. Hey, 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 the company jumps when he plays reveille. He's a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. Woo!
sleep a boogie every night and wakes them up the same way in the early bright. They clap their hands and stamp their feet because we know how he plays. When someone gets in a beat, he really breaks it up when he plays family. He's a boogie 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 boy, company B. Da 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 da.